Okay developers, welcome back. In this video, you're going to build a fully mobile responsive real estate React and Next.js application to add to your portfolio. We're going to have homepage hero sections, React hook forms, image gallery sliders, property details pages, Chakra-UI CSS, and so much more. We're going to be using server-side rendering from Next.js as well as static site generation. You're also going to learn how to use custom React hooks and integrate data from API services like RapidAPI. When you're done with this build, you can show it off to potential freelance clients and just say that you designed it and built it. You can sell it as a template, or you can just walk through it in one of these one-on-one developer interviews. I don't care, just take it and make it yours. I'm going to warn you, I speak really fast here, but when I'm actually coding and explaining things, I talk pretty slow. So if you are a native English speaker, just put it on 2x speed and you'll be fine. You're going to need Node installed, a code editor, maybe like VS Code, and npm or yarn depending on your preference. So right click, create a new folder, and let's jump into the build. Okay, so in my new directory called real estate, I'm going to add the Next.js package. I'm going to use yarn create next app. And I'm going to use a full stop just after that to install Next in the current directory. I'm not going to use TypeScript, no ESLint, and no, I don't want to use the source directory, and no again. And there we have it. We have Next.js installed in our real estate directory. Right, so that you can follow along properly on this project, I'm going to give you two new files, two JSON files that I'm going to share with you down below. One is going to be a list of 30 properties, and the other one is going to be a single property, all in JSON format. I'm going to leave it on gist.github. So we're going to create a folder in the base of our project and save these two JSON files. So I'm going to head over here, new folder. Let's call this one features. Inside features, we're going to have a folder called data. And then inside data, I'm going to have property.json, which is going to hold one property. And then again, properties that is going to hold our list of properties. You can click on the button here, raw, which actually gives you the complete JSON in a very plain format that we can copy and paste. So this one would be the single property. I'm just going to paste that in here, save. And then if we head back, the file name is 30_properties. We grab that, click on raw, and copy and paste that into the properties file. Okay, so now that we're finished with the JSON files, we can leave that page. Now we also need to add React icons. So over in our project, we are going to do yarn add React icons. That's done. Now we need swiper. So again, yarn add swiper, and that is going to be our carousel for our images and properties. We also need Axios. So yarn add Axios. And we need to add Chakra-UI. So on the Chakra-UI getting started section, we can just head over to the yarn version of the installation, copy that, and paste it into our project. Now on the Chakra-UI getting started page, you can see that we need to add a provider to our app so that we can actually use Chakra across the entire application. So let's do that now. If we close this up and clean up our folders, head over to the main app page. We're going to remove the original style CSS. We're going to copy and paste the imports from Chakra-UI. Copy their provider. There we go. We can now use Chakra across our entire application because it's wrapped in the Chakra provider. So that's our package installation done. I think we can now close out of all of this and we can fire up our application to make sure that everything is working. I'm going to use yarn dev and then load up localhost 3000, and there we go. There's our default Next.js package. Okay, so now that our project is ready to go, we're going to go in and clean up all of the default code inside of index.js. We don't want any of this stuff. We can delete everything all the way down to the final main. Just delete everything. Now we're going to build our first component, which is going to be the navigation. So inside of features, we're going to have a folder called Common, which is going to hold different components that are shared across the entire app. So if we start here, Common, inside Common, we're going to have several modules. And one of those modules is going to be our navigation. Move this across here. Now, navigation is going to hold a desktop version and a mobile version. So we're going to have to create another components file. And one of those is going to be called navigation desktop. And another one is going to be called navigation mobile. This granular organization will make sense very shortly. Now, inside of our navigation, we're going to have a main navigation file and also an index file, which is going to export everything. Now, just to recap, this is going to make sense very shortly once we start building out multiple modules for our website. So we've got a features folder, which basically contains everything. Common, which is going to hold different modules and components that are shared across the entire application. One of those is going to be a module called navigation. Now, navigation is going to hold the desktop version and the mobile version. Both of those are going to be exported from the main navigation file, which you'll see in a second. So let's just crack on and get started. Okay, we're going to start with our navigation for desktop. So in the folder, we're going to create a new file, call it navigation desktop.js, and also an index file to export this particular component. Now in navigation desktop, I'm going to create a new functional component, export it as default, possibly call it navigation desktop, just so that we can see something on the page and know that everything is connected. Inside of index, we are going to export the default from that component. So again, we create the navigation desktop functional component, and then we export it in the sibling index.js file. Now let's do the same for navigation mobile. I'm going to create a new file for the same name, .js, and then again, index file to export that. Inside navigation mobile, I'm going to create a functional component and just export a little bit of text so we can see everything connected up. In the index.js file, we're going to export the default from the sibling component. We're then going to take both of these, the desktop and the mobile version, and we're going to pull them in to the main navigation file and then export that again from the sibling index file. So we're going to import navigation desktop and then import navigation mobile. Create a component, navigation, and then export both of these components. Okay, so now we've got one navigation file that exports both mobile and desktop, and then we're going to go into the sibling index file and export that as normal. Now from our main index file, which we just cleaned out inside Pages, we can import that one navigation file that exports mobile and desktop, and then we should see something on the page and we can get started. So in the file for index, we import navigation, close it off, and there we go. On our page, we have the export of desktop and mobile. Okay, let's close all of these files. Keep things nice and tidy, and let's head over to the navigation desktop. We're going to start building out our navigation using a bunch of boxes, text boxes, everything from the Chakra-UI library. So if we start off by importing box from Chakra-UI, this is basically a div. It boils down to a div. We're going to have a color of blue, and then we get the options for all the different blues Chakra provides. I'm going to go for 600. padding Y, which is the vertical padding. Going to do 2 rem, background color of white, and display. And this is where we get to use the breakpoints. So base would be the mobile version. So for the desktop navigation, at the base size, we don't want to show it, okay? But then at the medium size, medium breakpoint, we're going to have it displayed as block. And I'm going to have that as a string, okay? Now you can see here on the actual page, we're no longer seeing the navigation desktop because we're at a breakpoint too small for it to be shown. So if we open this up a little bit and see there, it displays the test in the color blue 600. So when we go back down to mobile size, display none is being activated. So let's close this out, open this window a bit so we can actually see what we're working with. We'll zoom in a little bit there. The first box is our container. The next one is going to be our inner container, which is going to have the logo and the navigation. So we're going to have another box, as you can see, is imported at the top from Chakra-UI. A box with a max width of 1280 pixels, margin 0 auto, and that gives us our inner container. So inside this main container, we're going to introduce the flex component from Chakra-UI. Inside this, we're going to have align items of center, and then justify content space around. Space between, sorry. We want the logo and the name on the left, and then navigation links on the opposite side of the navigation bar. So on the left of our navigation, we're going to have a box. This is going to contain a text element from Chakra-UI, so we need to import that as well. I'm going to call this website Casas. Font size, we'll do this one as 2XL, and font weight as black. We're going to bring in a icon from React Icons. This one's High Home Modern with a size of 30. Now we need to import this at the top. So import High Home Modern. We need that from React Icons HI2. And there we go. We've got a little house in our logo section. Now we need to get these two lined up. So we're going to use the parent box and put display flex, give it some spacing, and then align the items in the center. Okay, left side done. We're going to wrap both of these in a link from Next.js. So we're going to import next link, close that off, and wrap our logo box in that link. Error says we have to add an href, so we're going to add a string straight to the home section of the website. Now to keep things nice and tidy, we're going to create a separate file that is going to hold all of our navigation links. So if we open up the navigator, go to our parent navigation folder, create a new file and call it navigation consts.js. We're going to export a const called navigation links. It's going to be an array of objects. So we're going to have a key of title. This one's going to be properties. And then the link goes to the page properties. I'm going to do this again. Second one is going to be contact. It'll take us to the contact page. And the third one is going to be a phone number. So we're going to have random phone number, and that link is going to be a telephone link, so we can actually do click to call. So when you click on this link, your phone or your computer is going to open up an app and you can make the phone call. But on this one, we're going to add an icon as well, and for this we need the HI phone arrow up right. So let's try and get that right the first time. Phone arrow up right. Feels like a cheat code for a Sega game. And we're going to try and import that. from React icons. And this one belongs to the hi2 library as well. Okay, so now we need to import this into our navigation file. Let's go back to our navigation desktop and see if we can import that. So navigation links, there we go. Now, before we actually map over these links, I want to create a custom component at the bottom of this file. We're going to call it navigation link. It's going to take in a title, a link, and an icon. It's going to be an arrow function and returns a next link. The href is going to be the actual link passed in, and the content is going to be wrapped in a flex component from Chakra-UI. We're going to align the items in the center, give them a small gap, 0.5 rem, and then inside this flex, we're going to show the icon if there is one, and also the title that we pass in. Actually, let's call this one navigation link because we're only going to pass in one at a time. Now, if we head back up to our navigation section, first item is the logo and the name. Next one, we're going to be mapping over our array of object links. So navigation links dot map, and for each item, we're going to return the new component that we just made. Navigation link. Now the key, we're going to use item.title, and then we're just going to spread everything from the item. That's going to include the icon, the title, and the link. If we save that, we can see that our array of object links are now displayed in the navigation, and we have the icon there as well. So if it has an icon, it's going to display. If it doesn't, it's fine. Now here, we hover over properties. We can see at the bottom properties and showing up, contact, and then click to call. We can open FaceTime. I don't have FaceTime, but if I did, I can make a phone call directly from the website. Now to finish this section up, we're going to add a button on the end of our navigation section. We're going to import this from Chakra. Again, use create listing. The style of this button is going to have padding of 1.5 rem. We're going to give it a color scheme, which is colors for buttons in Chakra. I'm going to use Twitter, specific blue color from Twitter. Font size is going to be 0.8 rem, and that should be a string. And then font weight, we'll do medium. And that's pretty much all we need for the desktop version of our navigation. Okay, so let's work on our navigation mobile version. So we're gonna need to add some icons here. So I'm gonna do yarn add at Chakra-UI /icons. And then I'm gonna restart my server and close that out. Now we're gonna import or copy and paste basically most of these imports into our navigation mobile.js file. At the top of the file here, import that. We're also going to need to import or copy and paste our navigation link component. I mean, we could create a generic component, a separate file for this, but we'll see. We're going to put that at the bottom of our mobile file. And then we're also going to copy basically the entire inside of our desktop version and paste it into our mobile version. And then we have two navigations showing. So for the mobile version, we want the base version to be displayed, and then from medium size upwards to be hidden. So let's just swap these over and squeeze down the screen. So now this is the mobile version. Next up, we're going to remove the create listing button, not appropriate for mobile. We're going to wrap our navigation links in a menu from Chakra-UI again, and then wrap that again in menu list from Chakra-UI. We're going to need to add a menu button, which is perfect for mobile. Close that off as a single tag. As icon button, which needs to be imported. There we go. So we can see we've got a nice small gray button there, but we need to add some styles and an icon to make it usable. So if we add here ARIA label as options, icon is going to be hamburger icon from Chakra-UI, first option there after we just installed the package, self-closing tag, and the variant is going to be outline. And there we go. We have a nice little button, hamburger icon in the middle, and the variant is outlined, so we've got no color until we hover. Now we need to make a few tweaks to this. If we click on the button, it looks a little bit funky. We have missed one of the components for the menu list. We're going to remove the max width of 1280. So we've got a box on line 24 and a box on line 48. We're going to remove those. And we're going to adjust the padding on the original container. So we've got padding Y of 2 rem, remove the Y and give it a padding on all sides. And you can see we bring it in on the mobile version. Now in the menu list actually needs a menu item. And you can see here again, it looks a bit funky. We're missing the menu item. So we need to place that inside our navigation link component. We're going to replace the flex with a menu item from Chakra-UI. Now, if we click on this, we can see now each link is a menu item within our navigation link component. So it looks beautiful. And that is our mobile navigation done. You can add as many links as you want in the const file, you know, the array of object links, and it will just appear here perfectly. Let's just double check to make sure that they're both switching in and out. And there we go. Beautiful. We have the desktop navigation showing, and then we have the mobile navigation showing. Now, if we open up this window, there's something that isn't quite right about this menu. I think I may have forgotten something. So let's check this out. Everything is spread out, but I want two very visible sections. Logo on the left, links on the right. But right now it's spreading across the whole screen. Let's address that. So let's close the mobile, back to desktop. Now I'm looking at the flex. We have one section, which is the logo. And I think I'm missing, right, okay. We're going to create a flex from Chakra again. I'm going to wrap our navigation in this flex section and also the button. We're going to give this a gap of 12, align the items, center as always. Font weight, let's make it a bit fatter, medium. And let's check this out again. Okay, there we go. It's now gone from completely spread across the whole screen to two very clear sections. And that's what I was looking for. We've got the entire flex here. We've got section 1 and section 2 space in between. Perfect. So my mistake, I left out a flex component inside the desktop navigation. If you're following along, around line 24. Right, I think the next thing we should do is work on the footer. So once we have the navigation and the footer, we can just create a layout and use it across the entire website. So let's open up this window just a little bit. We are going to create a new folder inside modules. The footer is a common module. It's going to be used across the entire website. So it makes sense to place it inside common and then modules. We are going to need a footer.js file and also an index.js file to export that. And just like the navigation const links, we're going to use the same thing in the footer. Now what I'm going to do is save all of this data in the gist that I'm going to share under this video. You don't want to sit and watch me type out all of this stuff. So I'm going to leave it here and you can just copy and paste it into your footer const file. Okay, so we've got a section for services on the website. It's going to have a name or title and then a link to a particular page. And we've got about, work with us, and our offices. This is all just generic dummy data. Now inside of our footer, we're going to create a stateless functional component. I'm going to call it footer, and then we're just going to export a piece of text saying test, just to make sure that everything's working in a moment. Now inside the sibling index.js file, we are going to export default again from the sibling footer. There we go. Now, if we head over to the index page, we're going to pull in our new footer file. And there we go. On our page, we see we have test from the footer.js. So let's close this up, close the index. First thing we're going to do is import the links from footer consts. So it was services, about, what else do we have? Our offices, and work with us. We're going to create a main container, which is going to be a box from Chakra-UI, which is going to house everything. Going to give it a background color of blue 600. And inside this main container, we're going to have a box from Chakra again. This time we're going to give it a max width of 1280, margin of 0 and auto to place it in the center, padding vertical, padding Y, and that's going to be 3 rem, and padding X, which is horizontal, is going to be using the breakpoints again. So we're going to do base 2 rem for mobile, and then from the tiniest screens upwards after mobile, we're going to have 0 padding. And obviously because I can't read, I've put black alpha. We actually need blue 600. There we go. Beautiful. Now in this file, we're going to have a few components that are going to house footer links and footer titles. So let's get started with that. We're going to have const footer link, arrow function. It's going to return a text box from Chakra, which basically is a paragraph tag. Inside that, we're going to have a link from Next. And for each of these footer links, we're going to pass it in a name and a link. Now inside the next link, the href is going to be link, and the text inside the link is going to be name. We're also going to create another one for the headers. So footer header. This is also going to return a text box from Chakra-UI, and inside that we're going to return a title. So we're going to destructure title from the passed in data. Now on this, we're going to have this as a h4 tag. The weight is going to be light, font size, XL, margin bottom, 1 rem. Now inside of our footer, we are going to use the simple grid from Chakra-UI. It's going to give us the ability to spread out our columns in a very simple way. So columns is going to be 4, and that will give us 4 equally sized columns across the page. Color for the text is going to be white alpha 700, a gap of 1.7 rem, and a min child width of 150 pixels. So our first column is going to be the services column. So we're going to have a flex. Inside that flex, we're going to have a footer header that we just created. We're going to pass in a prop, services, and obviously we get an error because I didn't import flex from Chakra-UI. There we go. So we can see our header is working. Underneath that header, we're going to have services.map. And we're going to return the footer link component that we created with a key of item.name. And then spread out everything else from that item. And there we go. Absolute mess. So now let's, on this flex, we're going to put flex direction as column. And that will give us our first simple grid column, services as an h4, and then all of our links from the const file nicely laid out. And they're all next links. You can see at the bottom, our services, meet the team, careers, latest news. Perfect. Now all we've got to do is do this 3 more times with the other imports from the const file. So literally what I can do here is take our first column and duplicate it 3 times. So in total, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Second one is going to be about. And then we're going to map over the about. Then we'll have our offices. And that will map over our offices. And the last one is work with us. And we're going to map over work with us. Is that going to work? Perfect. Beautiful. You can see here the H4 tags coming in, about, our offices, work with us, and they are all next links going to the correct pages. And let's check if Simple Grid is working. There we go. Perfect. So the moment these columns go below 150 pixels, they automatically and they wrap around. How quick was that? Now, after our Simple Grid, we're going to create a bottom bar. So this is going to be like a darker blue at the bottom with the logo and, you know, the copyright, terms and conditions stuff. So all we're going to do here is another box from Chakra, good old box. Background color, blue 900, nice and dark. Display flex, padding 2 rem. There we go. You can see the blue coming in now. We've got some spacing in there. Justify the content, center. Align items, center as always. Flex direction, column. And the color of the text inside this box, we want to have it as white. So any text we put in there, it's going to be white, centered, and in the middle. So now for the logo, we're going to have another box. Inside there, we're going to do HI, what was that called? Home Modern. There we go. And you can see we've got our logo from React Icons. Where are we? Here we go. Hi Home Modern from React Icons HI2. Under that, we're going to have a text. Going to have our logo name or our business name, font size, XL. The weight is going to be black. And we need to align these two. So display, flex, gap of 2, align items, center. Maybe that text is too big. Let's give it a LG size. There we go. And then under that, we're going to have another text box, all rights reserved, all of that good stuff, copyright, something. But this one, we're going to give it a margin top of 1 rem. Font size, super small. Going to give it an XS. Text align, good old center. And there we go. You can put whatever you want in there, terms and conditions, links, copyright 2029 or whatever year it is that you're watching this video. And that should be our footer done. We can now use this across the entire website. But first, I think we're going to create a layout so we can easily import the header and footer in all of our files. Oh, making you dizzy there. Okay, so now I think it's time for us to create a default layout using our navigation and our footer so we can use it across the entire website and just wrap content inside it. So inside features, I'm going to create a new folder called layouts. Inside layouts, you know how it goes. I'm going to create a default layout folder. Inside that, we're going to have the index.js and the default layout.js component. Okay, so inside this file, we're going to have a component called default layout. We're going to have a placeholder for test. Now inside this file, we want to import navigation. We also want to import the footer. And then we can remove the placeholder test. Inside of the sibling index file, we are going to export the default from the sibling default layout file. Perfect. Now inside default layout, imports good, navigation good, footer good. Okay, so we're going to go to the index page inside the pages folder for Next.js. And we're going to replace the individual imports for navigation and footer. And we're going to bring in default layout. And anything inside these two will be classed as children. Also, something I forgot there, we need to bring those children into the component. Now, anything between the default layout tags is classed as children and is rendered between the navigation and the footer. So here we can see our gibberish text, blah, 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 is now automatically rendered between navigation and the footer. We can now use this default layout as the parent tag for our page. We can now delete navigation and footer as individual imports and just have our default layout as the default. Okay, let's start working on our hero banner for the home page. Now for this one, we're going to create a new folder in our features folder. I'm going to call it home. Inside this one, we're going to have one more folder called components. And then inside here, we're going to have a folder called hero banner. Then same as always, inside this folder, hero banner.js, and then an index file to export everything. Inside hero banner, if I can spell correctly, that should be hero banner. And then the placeholder test, as always, in the sibling index folder. Going to move a bit faster now. Now in the index page, we are going to import that. Remove this dummy text, hero banner. And we can see on our page, the test from hero banner is now displayed, wrapped inside our default layout. So for our hero banner, we're going to start building up some layers. So let's start off with the good old Chakra-UI box. Import that in, dummy test, and then we're going to have a position of relative, min height. I'm going to use the breakpoints again. So the base for the mobile version is going to be 110 vertical height, which is going to fill the entire screen and a bit more. And then from small size up, we're going to have 60 view height, and that's going to contain some text and a form later on. Background image is going to be a URL, and that's going to be in the public folder. It's going to be called hero bg JPEG, I believe. Let's see if I can name that correctly. Hero GB. What an idiot. There we go. Uppercase B. And I've also placed that in a folder called hero. And there we go. Finally working, we have our background image in the correct place. Background position is going to be center. Background size, cover, and then background attachment is going to be fixed for now. So we get that parallax scrolling there. See, the image stays still while we scroll up and down. Beautiful. Now the reason we have position relative is because I want to do a blue color overlay on our picture. And to achieve that, we need this position to be relative, and then we're going to do an absolute position on top. So we need another box, self-closing box here. Position absolute as the child, width 100%, height 100% again. Opacity, going to bring that down to 0.85. And then the background color is going to be blue 900. See, if I bring that opacity up to 1, it's going to completely cover it. 0.5 maybe, it'd be difficult to read anything on top of that. So 0.85 gives us a space just dark enough to have some text on top, but also see the picture behind. And we also have the parallax scrolling. For this next box, I want to have a container that has space for text on the left and a form on the right. I'm going to start off with a box, the good old box. I'm going to keep saying that. Test. Okay, so now we need to have display flex, flex direction. For the base, I'm going to have the column, and then small screens upwards, we're going to have row. Align item center. Justify content, base, flex start. Small screens upwards, we're going to have space between. Max width on this one, we're going to have 1280. Position is going to be absolute. Color of the text inside, going to be white. The font weight, we're going to have light, keep it classy. And we have to specify the positioning because we're working with absolute and relative parents. And you see that will keep it in the center. Last piece is margin 0 auto and padding of 2 rem. Now inside this box, we're going to have 2 boxes, left and right. Left side is going to have a width, base of 100%, small 50%. Inside the left side box, we're going to have a text tag. It needs to be imported correctly. Font size on the base 4XL, SM 5XL. Line height shorter and margin bottom 1.5 rem. Now inside this box we can have any gibberish we want. What is a typical direct response kind of thing to say? Download our new property buying guide today, something. But then when it comes to marketing, you've got to make sure that the PDF you're giving away looks super important. So obviously it's got to be bold. There we go, the property buying guide. Now the left side is going to have our form, which we'll get to in a second. So we'll do a width of 100% on the base. And then SM, we'll just do auto. Now to give this a little bit of pizzazz, we're going to wrap the whole thing in an animation box provided by Chakra called Fade. So as I type that out, you can see I get the option to import it, hit tab, imports at the top, and then we're going to close that off and place the fade right at the end. So everything is wrapped in the fade, and then we're going to pass in a prop called in, and we're done. So you can see as we reload the page, we get a slight, very subtle animation come in there. Doesn't take too long, but it gives a little bit of a little something. I think it makes sense if we work on the form next. Okay, so let's squeeze this one down. Open up the file manager. We're going to put our form component next to our hero banner. So in the home components, we're going to have hero form. Same as always, index.js, hero form.js. Inside our hero form, same as always, placeholder, just because I'm special. In the sibling index file, export hero form. Now for our form, we need to use React hook form. It's a super easy way to just build forms that just work. It includes validation if you specify it. So if we go to their getting started page, they've got npm install. I'm using yarn, so I'm going to copy that. Yarn add React hook form, yarn dev, get back up and running. Now inside my hero form, let's close some of these windows. What a mess. Hero form, there we go. Right, now we've installed that, I need to import from React hook form. Nope, React. Geez, it's too early in the morning. There we go, use form, perfect. Now use form comes with its own hook, so we're gonna instantiate use form, and then we're gonna pull off or destructure a couple of methods that it provides. So the first one is register, then we have handle submit, and form state, and on that we have errors. And for now, until you decide how you want to actually submit your data, we can just log it to the console. So React hook form is automatically going to pass our submit function, the data it has, and we're going to log it to the console. Obviously, you can integrate this with your form backend service. Maybe you've got MailChimp, maybe you've got ConvertKit. So this part is up to you. So let's close this down and get started on our form. Okay, we're going to start off with, you guessed it, a box from Chakra, width. Need to import that box correctly from Chakra. There we go, at the top. The width is going to be 100%. Padding, 2 rem. Going to give it a radius, a border radius of small, and a background color of white. That is not how you spell white, that's how you spell white. And the color of the text inside this box is going to be gray 700. Now we should probably import this into the hero banner so we can see what we're actually doing. If we open up our hero banner, scroll down to our placeholder for form. Where are you? There you are. And import our hero form. Self-closing tag. And there we go. Now back inside the form, we're going to have a text box. Make sure we import that from Chakra correctly. This is going to say free PDF guide. Font size, Excel. Font weight, bold. We're going to have a second text box. Complete the form below to download your guide. You got to tell people what to do several times. Font size, not font family. Going to go large on this one. Just a bit smaller than Excel. Now to get started on the form, just going to squeeze this down just a bit. Going to open up the form tag. Choose my onSubmit function. Handle submit, onSubmit. So this feels a bit backwards, but let's have a look. So the form has the onSubmit function by default. We're passing in handle submit, which comes from useForm, and then useForm has to get told what function that we wrote needs to be executed. So the form has an onSubmit, React hook forms has handle submit, and then our function that we wrote, spelled correctly, is the one that gets executed by React hook form. Then I'm going to wrap this in a form control from Chakra-UI, just so we get some UI benefits. And we're going to start with our inputs. So we're going to have an input from Chakra again, self-closing tag, margin top, it's going to be 1.3 rem. Going to give it an ID of name, type, text, placeholder, and then for all of our inputs that use React hook form, we need to register the input itself. And everything is going to be required set to true. So React hook form is going to create an object. One of the keys is going to be name, and then the data from this input is going to be the value of name. Now, if we get any errors, React hook form provides those errors for us. So errors dot And then the key will be the name we just registered. So errors.name will contain any errors on this particular input. And if we do have any errors, we're going to just show some text. So the old text box from Chakra. Going to render out errors.name.type. And this is going to be maybe smaller font size, XS, color, red, 400. Now we duplicate this 2 more times. I'm going to update the name to email. Type is going to be email, placeholder, email, register, email, required, true. Update the error type. And we have email, done. Next, phone, ID, a phone, type, we'll do text again, placeholder, phone, register phone, required, true, and then errors, phone. 3 inputs done. Now, for email and phone, what we're going to do is we're going to wrap these in a flex to give us some more space. So after the name error, we're going to have a flex box from Chakra. And we're going to close it just after our phone error. There we go. We have email and phone side by side. Now on our flex box, we want a gap because right now they're pushed up against each other. It's kind of bad. So on the base, we'll have 0. Small, 1 rem. And then flex direction, base, column, SM, row. Perfect. And then after our flex box, we are going to have a checkbox. And that comes from Chakra-UI as well. There we go, checkbox. Going to have a margin top, 1.3 rem. ID of GDPR because I'm in Europe. Type is going to be checkbox. Placeholder, GDPR. And then we need to register GDPR required set to true. Okay, checkbox, margin top 1.3, ID, type, placeholder, register. Now inside of this checkbox, we're going to have some text. So I consent to having all of my details taken by the man. Now this form needs to be submitted, so we're going to have some errors for our checkbox. So again, errors.gdpr, that's the name that we registered. If there are any errors, we're going to return text. We can just copy and paste our text from here and update this to GDPR. All we need now is a button to submit our form from Chakra. Download now. Need to give it a bit of styling. So type is going to be submit, so it actually works with the form. Color scheme, blue. Width 100%. Font size, going to go for XL. Padding 2 rem and a margin top. Give it some breathing space of 2 rem as well. Beautiful. And we can see here in the mobile version, email and phone are in a column and everything is nicely stacked up, perfect for a phone. Let's open our hero banner and add a little bit more, what do they call it? Pizzazz. So after our download spiel, We're going to have another text, oh, bit too big there. Calm down, mate. Going to have another text box from Chakra. Make sure it's the correct one. Let's explain what it is. So a free PDF with our best secrets for evaluating a property purchase, calculating profit, and so much more. Let's say font size LG for small screen, well, for mobile, and then for small screens, we're going to go for 2XL. Boom. Okay, looking good. Mobile needs some space. So let's say the hero form needs a bit of margin top. So let's say margin top 2 rem on mobile, on small. We don't really want to get involved with that. There we go. Okay, so next I think we should start building out our property swiper, our carousel. So let's close this down. We're going to have a list of properties scrolling across the screen. Before we do that, we need to pass this page our dummy data. So let's do that. If we close out all of these windows, go to our index page, and we're going to export an async function, get static props. And this comes from Next.js. Now, get static props fetches data at build time and then creates a statically generated page. But to make things faster right now, we're going to use our dummy data, pass it through static props, and then pass it up to our index page. Later on, we'll convert that into an API call. But for now, we're going to use dummy data and save some of that bandwidth because the API only gives us maybe, I think it's 50 or 100 calls a day. And when you're building things like this, you're easily going to go over that. So inside get static props, we're going to use const data equals require node style, inside features, inside data, and then we've got a file called properties. If we look in our folder structure here, features, data, properties. That's what we're pretending to fetch right now. Now, if we look inside here, we've got an object with an array called hits. So we need to index into this and grab the hits array, which contains all of our different dummy properties. So let's do that. Now, because our list of properties is an object, we should be able to destructure that hits key that we just saw. And then we can return props, properties, and then give it the data hits. So now in our index page, we're going to be receiving properties. And let's log that out on the screen and see just how much we have properties. There we go. It would help if I spelled props correctly. Let's open this screen up a little bit. Go into the inspector, go to console and see if anything has actually happened. And no, let's debug this one. Oh, no, there we go. Had to refresh. So now you can see we've got all of our properties in an array of objects with each one with its own ID and a lot of data. This is basically mocking our API call that we're going to write later on. I think it actually makes more sense to call this featured properties because it's only going to be a select number on the home page. It isn't going to be all of them. So let's rename these to be featured properties. And we'll change that in the props. And we'll also change that in the props on the index page. And then we'll save that. Now we're going to create a feature properties component. So let's do that. Head into our features. Now, this is only really going to be on the home page. So we'll place it in the home page section. Inside components, we're going to have featured properties, index file, as always, and our JS file. Featured properties, export some dummy text, and then inside of our sibling, I'm going to export default from the sibling feature properties. And then in the index page, we're going to import that new component and close it off. So we import feature properties as the component, and now we're going to pass all of that data as props to our new component. Now inside feature properties, we need to receive our props. So let's do that. Feature properties, we're going to pull off feature properties. So now our component has access to that data, and we're going to start building out the UI. So as always, the good old box from Chakra-UI. Going to give this one a background color of blue 50. Inside that, another box. This one's going to have a max width of 1280 pixels. Margin 0 auto, get it in the center. Text inside this box is going to be gray 600, and then we're going to have some padding on here. So we're going to do padding, so it's padding Y, and then we're going to use the breakpoints again. So base 3 rem, and small screens upwards 6 rem. There we go, a nice light blue color to place our carousel later on. We're going to have some title text, so let's use the text box from Chakra. Discover our featured listings. Let's say properties, keep it consistent. There we go. So let's make it a bit bigger. Font size. Let's do some breakpoints. We could do base of 4XL. SM of 5XL. And I am missing a colon. There we go. Line height, nice and tight, as shorter. Font weight, again, light, keeping it classy. Padding on the X axis, so that's left and right. I'm gonna do 2 rem. Lots of errors today. There we go. And then finally, text align center. Get things in the middle. Okay, so we have our title, probably do a subheading, and then we can have our carousel. I think that'll look pretty tight. So let's go with some more text. Text box. A selection of our best properties. Let's go with font size of probably 2XL. Yeah. Font weight of light again. Margin top, 1 rem. Margin bottom, 3 rem. Padding on the left and the right, so that's padding X, 2 rem. And then text align, get that in the center. And I think that looks pretty tight. It's pretty nice. Okay. And this is where things are going to get a bit crazy. We're going to have our property slider just here. And then we're going to pass it the featured listings, the featured properties from the props that are being passed from the index page. So the data is being passed from the index page to the featured properties component, and then down again into our property slider or carousel. So let's do that next. So inside of our properties, our featured properties folder, I'm going to create a new folder called components. And inside that, we're going to have our property slider. And again, inside property slider, as always, index.js and property slider.js. And then in our index file, we are going to do the same as always. Export default from the sibling property slider. To close some of these windows. Okay, we are now in property slider. Now there's going to be quite a few things to import here as we're going to be using Swiper.js. So try and follow along. If not, just download the code later on. So we're going to import Swiper and Swiper slide. And that's going to come from Swiper React. Next, we need to import from Swiper. We're going to grab the autoplay and pagination. We also need to import the CSS that comes with the Swiper. So import Swiper CSS. We need to import the pagination and navigation. So navigation and pagination. Let's start building out our slider. So first of all, we're going to have Swiper. We're going to close that off and we're going to start adding some props to Swiper.js. First is going to be slides per view. There we go, slides per view. We're going to stick with 3 for now, and then later on we're going to do some responsive stuff, okay? So then space between each slide is going to be 10. Let's close this. There we go, more space. Looping through all of the slides, we're going to keep it true so that it never stops. Loop fill group set to true. So that keeps it looping around, and then the first one becomes the last one, and so on. You'll see later. Centered slides, true, so that whenever one gets dragged by a mouse or a finger, it centers the next slide. Autoplay, we're going to have a delay of 2000 milliseconds, not 20,000, 2000. And then disable on interaction, true. And then pagination, going to have dynamic bullets set to true. And then the modules that we need to have on this to get everything working are autoplay that we imported and pagination. And then the class name is called mySwiper. Okay, so this is basically a wrapper that wraps our slides, and we're going to create separate property cards, map over our featured listings and return a card for each one, and then place it into our slider. So let's start looking into that. I actually want to use our property cards in more than one place, so I think we should put it in the common folder. We'll call it property slider card. Let's call it property card, because we don't want to just have it on the slider. We'll have an index and a component file, property card.js. Perfect. Property card, as always. And then in the index file, we're going to export default from the sibling. Are you tired of me saying that yet? Property card, index, perfect. Now we need to hook all of this up. So we started with the featured property box. So let's head over to featured properties. We need to grab our property slider, import that, and we will address some of these errors in a second, but we need to get the feature properties into our slider. So let's pass the props again, feature properties into the property slider. Now, if we go to our property slider, we're going to receive those props and we're going to map over them inside our Swiper component. So we have feature properties.map. And for each property, let's call it property. Let's close this up, give you guys some more space. We are going to return a Swiper slide, which comes from Swiper.js. And inside that is going to be our property card. We're going to have a key on each slide, and that's going to be property.id. And each card is going to receive all of the data from each property. Now, if we look at this error, I think I have missed out the directory for CSS there. Okay, now next error. Let's see if we can debug why I cannot access my feature properties. I'm going to console.log feature properties and then return. So let's open up the console and nothing is being passed in for some reason. It is. It's an array. It has objects. Interesting. Make sure I'm in the right place. Okay, let's address some more of these errors in a second. So I am currently receiving feature properties. Okay, I guess it was just a refresh that was needed. There we go. We have our very messed up slider, swiper, carousel, whatever you want to call it. And you can see for each property, it is rendering my property card, and inside property card is just the word test. Okay, now before we can build our cards, we need to do quite a bit of work using a custom hook. We're going to take all of this data from property and we're going to slice off individual pieces, do some logic, and then pass the cleaned up logic into our card. We want our components to be pretty clean and lean and only deal with the UI. We don't really want our components to be doing logic and have 40 lines of functions. We want to extract all of that into a custom hook and possibly reuse it elsewhere. So let's start by opening up the navigation. We're going to go into features. Inside common, we're going to have a new folder called hooks. Let's give it a capital. Inside hooks, we're going to have a new file. We're going to call it use property format. Export const use property format. Now what I'm going to do is return an object with all of the different items that I want, and then we can fill them in as we go along. So in the end, I basically want to have an object that has the address, cover photo, property type, price, title, blah, blah, blah. You get the rest. And we're going to return that. Okay. But we need to get all of this information out of each property. So we're going to pass in a property to this custom hook, and it'll be easier if you can actually see the property itself. So it's passing in a bunch of properties. So let us have this side by side. So the first thing we want is the address. Can I get this any smaller? No. Right. There we go. Now, the first thing I want is the address. So const address is going to be property. We're going to go into our property. We're going to go to location. And you can see location is an array. So we're going to have to map over this to get each section of the address. So if we map over this and we get the name from each item in the array, we're going to be left with an array separated by commas. So we'll probably have to join that based on a comma. So let's do that now. So property.location.map for each item. We're going to return item.name, which we can see here. This is going to give us an array, and then we're going to join that array up using a comma and a space. That's the first one done. Next, we're going to have cover photo. So const cover photo is going to be property dot, let's have a look here. Let's search cover photo. There we go. So cover photo is an object. It has an ID, and we just want the URL. So let's do that. Property.coverphoto.url. Then we want property type, and that is going to be probably a string. So let's look for a property type here. I think it's under category. There we go. So under category, we have another array, and we have two items in this array. So what we're going to do is take category 0 and category 1 and put those into a string. So we've got two backticks. We're going to add our variable. We're going to have property.category 0.name, and we're going to duplicate that again for item 1, and we're going to put a comma in between those. So this property type should say residential apartments. Next, we need the price. So const price equals property, and let's look for the price here. Okay, so price, we've got an unformatted number, hidden price, 750,000. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to convert this to a local string. We'll probably use USA dollars for the sake of speed, but you can choose your own currency depending on what JavaScript gives you. So let's do property.price.to locale string, which is an object, First item, going to do n US. Second is another object with style as currency. Currency as USD. And then maximum fraction digits. We want to keep this nice and small, 0. Next, we want title. So const title equals property dot, let's see, where is our title here? Okay, we have one title, we have 3 titles, maybe more. I don't like the way these names are written. It looks like people are trying to do some SEO or something. They look horrible, not very descriptive, but we'll use it anyway somewhere. I'm sure we can find a use for it. So we'll do property.title. Next, we have rooms. And that's going to be property.rooms. And you can see here baths. We use that. Const baths equals property.baths. Now we need purpose. Property dot, do we have purpose? We do, for sale. So property.purpose. We need the size, so square size equals property. I think we just saw it. Was it area? Yeah, so we're going to have property.area. And then probably, there's too many digits there on the end. A nice whole number. So we'll do 2 fixed. We'll do 2. And lastly, we'll just take the external ID. That's property dot, I think it's the same, external ID. Let's double check. So near title, we have external ID. So now that we've ripped all of these off of property, any property we pass into this is going to have these items ripped off and then placed in a nice clean object that we can use wherever we want. So if we go back to our swiper card, our property card, each property card is going to be passed in. Let's close this all down, make this easier to see. Where are we? Okay, so let's start from here. Property slider. We're going to pass an individual property into each card because we're mapping over our featured properties. If we go into property card, we're going to receive property. And then from here, what I want to do is I'm going to take our custom hook. It was called use property format, and that auto imports from the hooks folder. If we look back at the use property format, it expects a single property, which we can give it there. And then we can, hopefully, extract all of these items from that custom hook. So we don't have to do any logic, all of this custom JavaScript stuff. We don't really want this in our component. It's going to make the file a lot longer, more difficult to read, and we're going to cross our concerns. We only want the component to display data, UI stuff only. All of our logic is now exported into a custom hook. So let's grab everything we need from our custom hook. There we go. So if we replace test with address, we should see all the addresses in the swiper, slider, carousel, whatever you want to call it. Title, those ugly titles that we used. Price, a nice whole number for price, perfect. Cover photo should be a URL. So now we can start building our cards. We have all the information that we need. We can pull it off each property and keep our components nice and clean and only deal with display data. Okay, let's increase the size again. Now we're going to start building out our card. We're going to start with, you guessed it, a good old Chakra box. This box is going to have a margin bottom, and we obviously didn't import that. Okay, let's try that again. Box from Chakra. There we go. At the top, got to make sure we import those components. Margin bottom, and the props are showing up. Perfect. I'm going to do 4 rem. Background color. Let's do white, because you can see here we've got a very, very light blue here. I'm going to keep the boxes white so they stand out nicely. Inside this box, we're going to have another box. Background image is going to be a variable. So we're going to have backticks, URL, our variable. We're going to have 2 backticks, URL, parentheses, and we're going to wrap our variable in double quotes. And then we're going to have cover, photo, as the URL. Perfect. Going to give it a height of 250 pixels. And you can see the URL is working for the images there, but we need to tidy it up. So 250 pixels on the height, background position, center. There we go. You can see it starting to come along. Background size. You're going to do cover, so we can see as much of the image as possible within our 250 size box. Position, relative, because we are going to put some text over the top of this. So we're going to use this as the parent, and then anything we overlay is going to have position absolute, so we can get it over the image and create some nice effects. Display, flex direction, column, justify content, space between. Now our first item inside our box is going to be a badge. So another Chakra box, margin, 1 rem. And inside that box, we're going to have a badge which comes from Chakra-UI. The color scheme of this badge is going to be green, just so it stands out. And inside the badge, we're going to use purpose. And we rip that off of the custom hook. See, now we've got for sale in each of these boxes. Lovely jubbly. Next thing we're going to have is price. So a new box, height, 50%. BG gradient, we're going to put a nice gradient on this one. We're going to do linear, parentheses, to top. And the colors we're going to use is going to be 0A, 0, B1, C, D, 9 as the first one. And the second one, we're going to do like a transparent white. So let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 Fs to get white, and then 0, 0 for the transparency, and 100%. Close those parentheses, and we should, perfect. So now we've got a nice dark blue at the bottom, and as it goes up, it fades to white, or basically transparent. So it starts dark at the bottom, and then fades up to nothing. So now we can put text here, and it'll be a lot more visible than if there was no. If we put white text on these images, might not see it so well, but with the gradient, gives it a nice bit of contrast. Would you agree? Let me know. Now inside this gradient box, we're going to have a text box from Chakra. It's going to have the price that we ripped off each property, and you can see there. Now we need to make it more visible, so let's give it a font size of 3XL. Let's give it a weight of medium. Color, not too harsh. Let's do a white alpha, maybe 800. So now underneath our picture box, we're going to have a new box. We're going to add some padding on all sides, 1.5 rem. Inside that, we're going to have a text box, and that's going to have property type. Okay, so you can see the white background coming in now. Nice bit of padding, and we can start working on the details of each card. This text box is going to be XL for font size. Font weight of medium, and then margin bottom, 1 rem. Nice. Underneath that, we're going to have another text box. We're going to put in the address, which we ripped off. So address, there we go. And you can see each individual address is being placed in the box. Perfect. Let's do some styling. So we've got font weight, the stylish light, font size. Let's go with medium, or let's do small. Yeah. And then if it's too long, let's use is truncated. Without anything else, that will just default to true. So if that's true, if you look at the text here, if it's too long, it's just going to chop it off, because what we don't want is each individual box to be pushed down to a random height based on how many lines of text there are. I can't stand that. So is truncated should chop it off. So let's save that. Perfect. Now I've got a nice uniform height across all the cards. If the address is too long, it just chops it off. We're going to use the same trick for the next text box. We're going to have in here the title. And if a title is too long, because some people have used these stupid titles, all caps, who does that? Let's chop it up. So we're going to have is truncated again, and there we go. Now after our title, we're going to use the H stack, and that comes from Chakra-UI as well. It's going to be a horizontal stack which utilizes the flexbox. Going to give it a spacing between each item as 1.3 rem, margin top of 1 rem, and inside each of these we're going to have a flex and place something like rooms, for example. I did not import my flex. There we go. Let's scroll down back to our boxes and we have rooms 1. Perfect. Let's put some styling on the rooms. Align items. Center, because we're going to have an icon in there. And a gap between the icon and the room number. I'm going to do 0.3 rem. So now in here, I'm going to use TB bed. And that is not going to import. Let's see if it will behave. No, it won't. So TB bed, I'm going to have to import these individually. Up to the top, we're going to import from React icons, never behaves correctly for me, and then TB. So React icons TB, and from there, let's just do this now. So we've got TB bed. There we go, TB capital B bed. We're going to do the same for bath, TB bath, and TB ruler. So now we've got all of the icons that we need. We can go back down and finish that. And you can see now the bed icon is next to the number of rooms that we have. Perfect. We're going to duplicate our flex here 2 more times. And you can see it's the horizontal stack has pushed it all across. Next one is going to be baths. And we're going to use TB bath as the icon. Perfect. And the last one is going to be TB ruler. And that is going to be the SQ size that we ripped off using our custom hook. I think it was meters squared actually. So let's use sup M2. And that gives us our meters squared. Now to make this box actually useful, we're going to wrap it in a Next.js link. So at the top, just under the first box, we're going to have a link from next link. Close that off. href. And the link is going to be / well, let's do backticks so we can use our external ID. And we've used all of these so far except external ID. We're going to use the ID to push us to a page that goes and fetches the property based on the ID. So let's use that. So we're going to say / properties, which we're going to make later, properties, / again. Going to use our variable external ID. We're going to take the closing tag for this link and we're going to go all the way to the bottom and just place it just before the last box closes. And if we hover over these cards now, we should see a link to properties 6359. Perfect. Let's see if we can do something about this text. I want this text to be down in the darkest part of the gradient here. So let's see if we can do that. Scroll back up to price. Let's see what price is doing. Okay, so I feel like maybe I missed out a lot of props here. So let's say this box, height is 50%, half of the box, perfect. Background gradient, perfect. Now, if I'm going to push this text down, I'm probably going to have to put a flex on it. So let's say display, flex, align items, flex end, see if we can push it down. There we go. And then padding, because it's a bit too close to the bottom left and the left side there, let's push it up and over just a little bit. So let's do padding on all sides, say 1 rem. Okay, that is more what I had in mind. Lovely jubbly. And I think that will do nicely for our cards. Okay, let's backtrack just a bit. If we look at the amount of, oh, we have an error. Let's check this out. Padding X without a G. Let's address that. We search for that specific string. There we go. And it is in featured properties and I have missed a G, padding G. There we go. Let's check out the rest of the errors. Bound to be more. No, okay, we're good. So let's close this up. Let's go back to our index page. I feel like if we look at the featured listings, featured properties. I'm pretty sure we are passing, don't do that. There we go. Properties. Yeah, okay, we're passing 25. Let's use slice to do something like 5 or 6, because not everything can be featured. Let's feature 5. Okay, so let's squeeze that down. Where do we have this? Let's delete this console log. Index page is fetching the data. Let's see if we can do it on hits. We'll do hits.slice, start at 0 and end at 5. Save that and see if it gives me any dramas. Okay, we're still displaying properties. Let's log that back out again. There we go. We have 5 featured properties. If everything is featured, nothing is featured, right? So now we just have 5. If we click on this, it will take us to a 404 page, but we can see the URL. We need to build this page, properties, and then we need to build a dynamic way to fetch a specific property. Okay, we're doing good. We're doing good. Okay, so now we have our hero section, our hero form, our featured properties. Now let's move on to a meet the team section. We're going to have several individual photos of team members, fake team members, and they're all going to have individual cards with details about them. So let's get to work on that. What I'm going to do again is in the gist. If you go to the gist and search for meettheteam.js, I'm going to leave all of the boring bits in here so you can just copy and paste it. Okay, so if we go to our navigation, we're going to go up to features. Inside home, we're going to create a new folder inside components for the home. I'm going to call this meet the team. Inside meet the team, we're going to create a new file called agent.consts.js, and in there you're just going to copy and paste the details of each agent from the gist and save it in there. Okay, it's going to save you some time. Back to meet the team, the folder. We're going to have a meet the team component.js. We're also going to have a index file to export that. We're going to have a components folder. Now inside meet the team, we're going to have a functional component, meet the team. And we're going to export some default text as always. In the sibling, you guessed it, we're going to export default, that's right, from, of course, the sibling, if I can type with these cold fingers. Now, inside meet the team, let's head back over to our page, spread that out a little bit. We're probably going to have to import this into the index.js. After our feature properties, we are going to import meet the team, the component, and then close that off. And you can see down here, test from meet the team is showing. Let's close this up, head back to meet the team, and obviously, as always, the good old box from Chakra. I'm going to close that and make sure it's imported. There we go. Now inside this box, we're going to have a max width of 1280 pixels. We're going to have a margin to bring it in the center, so 0 auto. Padding on the vertical axis, so padding Y. We're going to have, let's do some breakpoints. So on the base, on mobile, we're going to do 3 rem. And then on the small screens upwards, we're going to do 6 rem. And then inside this particular box, we're going to have some text. Font size, we need to import that text correctly. Come on, 1,000 times, Calvin. Font size, we're going to use breakpoints. We're going to have the base at 4XL, and then SM at 5XL. Line height, shorter. Font weight, obviously classy and light. Padding on the X-axis, we're going to have 2 rem. And then text align, get that text in the center using text align center. Perfect. So inside this, we're going to write meet the team, and hopefully it should look nice and pretty in the middle. There we go. Perfect. Now after this title, we're going to have a new box. We'll have a new text box. We're going to have the best in the industry at your service. 24/7. Going to give this a font size of 2XL, a font weight, light, margin top, 1 rem, margin bottom, there we go, 3 rem, padding X, 2 rem, and then align that text in the center using text align center. And there we go. I feel that looks pretty good. To finish this up, we're going to have a flexbox, and this is where we're going to have the cards for the agents. So direction on this, haven't imported it. Chakra-UI, perfect. Direction is going to be, so need some breakpoints. Base, make sure I spell column correctly. I get it wrong every single time. Small, we're going to have row. Okay, so it's going to be a column of meet the team cards. Otherwise, on a big screen, it'll be a row. Justify the content. Space between. And then give a gap between each card of 1.5 rem. Now in here, we need to import the agent consts that we saved at the base of meet the team. Okay, so let's do that. So agents, let's see if we can, perfect. Agents from the same folder. We're going to tab that, import it, just double check. Agents, perfect. So agents.map, we're going to return an agent card, but we haven't got that yet. So let's do, can we just do some test? There we go. Test, 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 test. Now for each agent, we're going to have an agent card, and for each of these, we need a key. So let's do the key of agent.name. They should be unique. And we're going to pass in all of the details from each agent into our component. There we go. So we're going to have a nice picture of each person and some details below. So let's build out our agent card. So we'll open up navigation, head to meet the team. We've got a folder called components, and inside components, we are going to have our agent card folder. Agent card. Inside agent cards, you guessed it, index.js, and then agent card. Geez, my typing is terrible today. Under pressure. SF. We're going to do agent card. We're going to export some dummy text. And in the sibling, you can do this by now. Obviously I can't. There we go. Agent card. Now we have our card. We're going to go back to meet the team, the component, and import that card. So let's get rid of that test. So we're going to do agent card from components, agent card. Perfect. Close it. Put the key back on. So agent.name. And then spread out the rest of the details from agent. So then we are mapping over the agents, and for each agent, we're going to return an agent card. The key is going to be agent.name. Always have a key when you're mapping, and we're going to pass in all the details for each agent. That's name, description, photo, everything. Okay, so now we have a place to put our agent cards. Let's start building the card itself. So if we jump into the card component file, we're going to start with the Chakra box. You guessed it. Import that. I'm going to give it a background color of slightly transparent white. We're then going to give it a padding, all sides with 2 rem, display, flex, justify content, center, align items, center again, and then margin bottom. We're going to do the breakpoints. We're going to have a base of 1 rem, and then on SM small, it's going to be 0. Now we're going to use a Chakra image box. You also have the option to use Next.js image box, but I prefer not to use that for my own reasons. So we're going to do a self-closing tag. The source for this image, after we've imported it, obviously, from Chakra-UI, we're going to do a source, and it's going to be passed in from the Meet the Team component, passing in an agent. So we're going to get access to name, image, description, and title. And then if we just place our image in there, there we go. Now I've got the images saved in the public folder under agents, and we've got the 4 agents here. I'll leave these assets in the repo link down below, so you can just copy and paste them in. Now on the image, we're going to have a width of 10 rem and a height of 10 rem. We're then going to do object fit cover, so we get the maximum amount of image on the size that we specified. So now you can see the images are showing nicely. Next up, we're going to add a radius to our image box, border radius full. So rather than having, let's say, medium, where it gives it a tiny radius, if we do full, it actually converts it into a circle. Margin bottom, 2 rem, and then a slight shadow of MD medium. Nice. Now after our image, we're going to have a text box, which we need to import from Chakra. And in there, we're going to use name that is passed in as a prop. We're going to add some color to this name. We're going to use blue 400. Font size, XL. And then font weight as bold. And you can see here, I have forgotten to do something with this flex here. We've got the name on the side of the image, and that's not right. We need to go back and double check. Display flex, center, center. There is no flex direction. And that should be column. Perfect. One more text box underneath the name. And in here, we're going to have title. And that brings in everyone's title, job title. We're going to do font size. Font size. And that's going to be LG for large. And then we'll do a slightly different color so it looks a bit cleaner. We'll do blue 600. Perfect. And the last piece of text we're going to use is going to be the description. And that's just some lorem ipsum text. And for this, we're going to do font size of MD, medium. I'm going to do the font weight as the classy light. Number of lines, we're going to chop this one down. This is going to be 4. So that's almost the same as truncating it, but this time we're going to choose the number of lines to display. And then possibly we could have a read more link that goes to their full description. We can look at that later on. Margin top. Give it a bit of space on top. We're going to do 1 rem. Space things out a bit. And then for the color, we're going to do gray. 600, I think. Nice. And that's it. That is our Meet the Team section finished. Now it looks a bit strange here. It's not actually mobile. I feel like we need to have this text centered. So let's do that. Let's do text align center on all of these text boxes. Let's do it on the parent box. So text align center, and that brings everything nice and central. Perfect. Would you agree? Okay, and then let's double check on mobile. So we open the inspector, and then Command Shift M is not going to work. There we go. Command Shift M gives me the mobile version. We still need to fix the responsiveness of the slider, which we'll go into soon. But right now, Meet the Team, a nice column of people, circular photos, slight shadow, and everything looking very neat and tidy. And that's the Meet the Team section done. Now, one of the last pieces for this homepage is going to be the partners. A lot of these real estate companies or a lot of corporate companies will show who they're affiliated with. A little strip of logos goes down nice with a lot of these companies. So let's build that out. We're in our features folder, We're in the home folder for the main index page. In components, we're going to create a new folder. We're going to call this partners. And you guessed it, index file and a partners component. And we'll just have some dummy text as always. Export that default. The sibling component for partners. Perfect. Now we're going to go to the index page and pull that in so we can see what we're working with. After meet the team, we're going to have partners. There we go. And then we have test showing from the partners section. Let's close all this up. And let's start building out our partners component. Now we're going to do another const. Let's in the partners folder do a new file. We'll call this partners consts.js. I'm going to export let's do an array. We'll do an array of image links, image URLs. So we'll have an array instead. I'm going to try and do this as quickly as possible. So we're going to have 4 images. Each one is going to be in the partners folder inside the public image folder. And then we're just going to name the images partner 1, 2, 3, and 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then .png. So now we have 4 images, 4 image links that we can pull in to our partners component. So let's do that. We're going to do partners and see there it's automatically pulling it in. Perfect. Partners.map. And then for each partner, we're going to return an image from Chakra-UI, self-closing tag. The key, because we're mapping, is going to be partner, source, partner again, align self, center, padding on all sides. We're going to do some breakpoints here. We're going to have base as 2 rem, SM as 3 rem. I'm going to add a filter which comes with Chakra-UI. So we're going to do filter, grayscale, parentheses 1. And these are a little bit dark for my liking. We have some broken images there. We'll fix that in a second. So let's give this an opacity, make it a bit softer. Let's do 0.4. Perfect. Now let's figure out why these images are not working. Okay, because not all of them are PNGs. So let's go back to our partners const. Partner 1, PNG, 2, PNG, partner 3 is a JPEG. Same for partner 4. And we actually have a 5th, which I forgot, and that is also a JPEG. Perfect. So now to line these up properly, let's wrap this. So we're going to wrap these in a simple grid. I'm going to remove the fragments there and just bring in simple grid from Chakra-UI and then close it off just after our mapping. Columns on this one, not colors, but columns. Now, if we add any more images, we're going to have to figure out how to do this, but easiest way for me is just to use partners, the array that we pulled in, and then just use length, which will give us 5. So now that will automatically give us 5 columns. Awesome. On this simple grid, we'll do margin, 0 auto, and then min child width is going to be 150 pixels. And that should be it. Let's have a quick look. Full size, evenly spaced out, images are all working. And then if we go to mobile, and we have our images nicely wrapping around. Okay, so now we're going to add the testimonial section underneath our partners. So if we open up the navigation for our code editor, we're going to go to Home, Components, and add a new folder called Testimonials. Again, same as always, Testimonials. Is that spelled correctly? Testimonials, I believe so. That's the component. And then we have the index.js to export that. Testimonials. And then export some dummy text. And then we're going to export the default from the sibling component. And then in our index file, let's go and pull that in. Under partners, we're going to have testimonials. Beautiful. Okay, I'm going to save you some time again. If we go over to our gist, we are going to look for, let's refresh this page. At the bottom of here, you're going to see testimonials.js, and you're just going to copy and paste that to save some time. Obviously, you can do your own, but you don't want to sit and watch that. So in testimonials, new file, testimonials.const.js. I'm just going to paste that from the gist that I'm providing at the bottom of this video. So I'm going to close that out. Back to our testimonials component. We're going to start with the box. I love Chakra-UI. You may have guessed it. Let's see what we're working with here. Okay, so background color. We're going to do a blue 50. Nice and light, very subtle. Inside this container box, we're going to have one more box. This one is going to be a max width, 1280 pixels. Margin, 0 auto, bring it in the center. And then padding vertical, which is padding Y. We're going to do some breakpoints again. Base, 3 rem. SM, 6 rem. Now our first item in our second box is going to be a text. Make sure it imports correctly. We're going to have a title, testimonials. Font size on this one. Do some breakpoints. Base, 4XL. SM, 5XL. If we use this a lot, it could be possible to create a generic. We'll look at that later on, see if it's worth it, depending on how many times we use this style of text across the website. Could be worth it, might not be worth it. Let's see. We're going to give it a line height. Font weight, we're going to use light. Forgot to say keeping it classy. Keeping it classy with light. Padding on the X axis, padding X, 2 rem. And then text align, center. Next text box. We're going to say, here's what our VAT clients have to say. So we've got a little subtitle here. I'm going to give it a font size of 2XL. Font weight, I'm going to use light. Margin top, 1 rem. Margin bottom, 3 rem. Padding on the x-axis, 2 rem. And then align that text in the center, and we should be good to go. Perfect. Now after this text box, we're going to wrap our testimonials that you copied and pasted in a simple grid. Simple grid is going to have columns, if I spell that correctly, columns of 3. Min child width, we're going to have 300 pixels. And then a gap between each testimonial. Let's do some breakpoints. So base, 0.5 rem. SM, 2.5 rem. Now we need to pull in our testimonials, map over them, and return something beautiful. So let's testimonial. Now we're probably going to need a testimonial card. So let's build that out. For now, we'll just do this and have some test. Okay. So inside testimonials, we're going to have a new folder, components. Inside that, we're going to have testimonial card. Same as always. Testimonial card.js. Index.js. Testimonial card. I'm going to export some random text there. And in the index file, export default from sibling. Perfect. Now we need some data to work with for our testimonial cards. So if we head back to Testimonials, the component, let's import our card, Testimonials card, self-closing tag. Because we're mapping, we need a key. So the key is going to be testimonial.name. And then we're just going to pass in the rest of the testimonial. So if we head back to our card, we can now rip off the data. Inside the const, I think we had a name, an image, a company, and a testimonial. So now we can use these inside of our component. Let's just make sure it's working. Let's say name. And no, I need to have that wrapped in fragments. Scroll down to testimonials. And there we go, the name of each person leaving a testimonial. Perfect. So let us start with a box. First box is going to have a background color of all white. We're going to do a padding on all sides of 3 rem. Put a flex on this, display flex. Flex direction, going to be column again. Margin bottom. Let's use the breakpoints. So we're going to do base, 1 rem, and then small size screens, we're going to have 0. Okay, so you can see the simple grid is already taking action with our empty testimonial box. What we're going to do is we're going to grab a icon from React Icons. So this one's going to be called, let's see if we React Icons, is it going to behave today? TB. So now I want to use the TB quote from React Icons. And inside of our box, we're going to have another box and we're going to place, geez, that was not correct. Going to paste our quote icon in there. The size, we're going to make this much bigger, so 40, and then give it a color to match the rest of the site. So 4299 E1. Lovely. After this box, we're going to have a text box from Chakra. Inside here is going to be the testimonial that we just ripped off of the props, and you can see there it's bringing it in nicely. Font size, going to go for LG. Color, let's take it down a little bit. Gray 500. Perfect. And then margin on the top and the bottom, margin Y. Let's give it some space to breathe. Let's do 1.8 rem. Lovely jubbly. Now after our text box, we're going to have a flex box. So flex from Chakra, make sure that imports correctly. Going to have a gap of 1 rem, align items, center. And our first item inside this flex is going to be an image from Chakra, self-closing tag. The source is going to be our image from the props that we're passing in. And we can see it doing its work here. Again, going to leave the images in the repo or the assets so you can just jump in and copy them over. The width of this image, we're going to use 6 rem, and the height is going to be the same. Object fit, going to be cover, not contain, but cover. Make sure nothing gets squashed, and the radius on these images is going to be 4. So we get circle images, perfect. Scroll down some. Now after our image, we're going to have a box. Inside this box, we're just going to have probably their name, maybe their job title or company. So after we do by, let's have a text box inside here and then place the name of the person. Now I'm going to make this text box a span rather than a paragraph tag because I actually want the by and the name to be alongside each other. So let's do text as span. And that allows us to convert the paragraph tag into a span tag, and span tags are inline, whereas paragraph tags are a display block, which separates them. So after the name, inside of our box, we're going to have another text, spelled correctly, obviously. And inside here, we're going to have company. And then we're going to use the company prop that is passed in. Now the company is going to have a font size to make it stand out a little bit of LG. We're going to have a font style of italic. Font weight You know what I'm going to say? You can say it for me. Color, let's do gray 600. And I think that could be it. Let's have a look here. How does this look to you? Are we good to go? Mobile style, nice and columned. Main screen, centered, testimonials, subtle background, matching color on the quotes, nice circular images. I think we are done with testimonials. Okay, so I think it's time that we try to fix the responsiveness of the slider/carousel. So let's close this out. When it comes to server-side rendering, Next.js, I ran into quite a few issues getting this slider to work. So I had to create a custom hook to listen for the screen size and then tell the slider how many cards to show based on how big the screen is. So let's try that out. So we're going to go into our hooks folder. Inside common, we have hooks. Going to create a new hook, use is desktop.js. So we're going to write export const use is desktop arrow function, and we're going to eventually return is desktop, so we can pour that into different components. First of all, we're going to use state. We're going to use the use state from React. So is desktop and set is desktop. And that is from, well, that is going to be using use state from React. And we can see we just import it in there. Initial value is going to be null. We're also going to need to import use effect. So use effect should import automatically if you start typing it. And inside the function, we're going to check the window size. So window.innerWidth, if it is greater than 1080, we can probably say that it's a desktop screen. So we're going to set desktop to be true. Else, we'll set desktop to be false. Now we need to add an event listener. So window.add event listener. We're listening for resize. See, it comes in automatically there. And then we need to pass in something for this listener to trigger if the screen size does change. So we're going to create a function called update media and then place it just before our event listener. So const update media, going to be an arrow function. And we're basically going to copy and paste this code. So this first block runs when the component mounts, but then we need to have the event listener trigger a specific function to do the same thing every time. And then we actually want this to run on mount, so we pass in an empty array to use effect. So now we should be able to use this hook, pull it into our carousel, and make it update based on what screen size we have. So let's see if we get any errors. I'll be surprised if we don't. We need to look inside features, home, feature properties, and it was part of feature properties. So we've got property slider. Okay, so now we should probably pull in our custom hook into this, and then slides per view. We should update this depending on how many or how big the screen is. So if I place 1 here, you can see it updates to 1, but we need a way to tell the slider when to have more. So I'm going to leave that as 1 for now. I'm going to do equals use is desktop, and you can see it's automatically pulling in from features, common, hooks. Tab that, call it, and then from here we should be able to use is desktop. And then if is desktop, it's going to be a boolean. It's going to be true or it's going to be false. If we check back at our okay, so is desktop originally is null, but on component mount, it's going to be true or it's going to be false. So if it's true, I'm going to use a ternary operator. And if is desktop is true, we're going to have 3 slides. And if it's false, it means it's mobile. So we're going to have 1. And let's see how many errors we get now. Hey, check it out. So we have 3 slides on our desktop, and we have the event listener listening for that change. And as we go to 1, we call update media, and it changes to 1. Now, good practice, we should remove the event listener when we aren't actually listening for anything anymore. So in use effect, we're going to return anonymous function, and window.remove event listener, resize, update media. So when this component unmounts, this should stop listening, and I think we're good to go. Would you agree? We've got 3 on a large screen. This looks more similar to what I would see on my phone. My phone's pretty big, and it looks just like this. So the footer, we've got 4 sections here, 2 columns. Let's scroll up. Testimonials, partners, and the slider. Okay, I think it's time for us to build out our property page. So when we click on properties, we need to have a page here that has all of our properties, not just the featured ones. So let's start with that. We're going to have to go into Next.js pages. I'm going to create a new folder, call it properties. I'm going to have an index file in here as the default page. And we're going to have properties. And we're going to export some dummy text as test. So now on the properties page, we have test. Perfect. Now we just want to render all of our properties. We're going to use the dummy text for now. And then at the end of the build, we're going to plug in the RapidAPI. So for now, we are going to get static props, which is going to fetch our data and then render a static HTML page. So export async function, get static props, and we can probably use the same code from our index page, our main index page. So let's copy that and replace this. But now instead of just pulling off 5, we're going to return all of them, and we're going to rename this to be properties. So we're going into our features folder, getting the data for all the properties, returning it as a prop called properties. We pass that into our page, and now our page has access to all 25 properties from our data JSON. Now we're going to wrap our page in our default layout that we've created already from features layout. That's going to be a wrapper. Now inside of our wrapper, we're going to have a box from Chakra. Make sure we import that. Something strange about that import from default layout. Let's try that again. Default layout. There we go. That's what I expected. Now we're going to close that, use it as a wrapper, and then use our box. Okay, so we have the navigation and the footer ready for our properties page. On this box, we're going to have a background color of F7, F8, F9. How lovely is that number? And a padding of 3 rem. And you see it's a slight gray color. Nice. Now inside this box, we're going to have a max width of 1280 pixels. Margin, 0 auto, bring it in the center. And then we're going to have a simple grid from Chakra-UI. And we are going to wrap our properties. But first, we're going to have a columns prop. And on mobile, I think we should have 1 column. And on small screens and upwards, we should have 3. The gap between each property, we'll use breakpoints. For base, we'll have 0. And then SM, we'll have 2 rem. Now inside of our simple grid, we're going to take our properties, we're going to map over them. And then for each property, we're going to return a card. So in here, property. And then what I want to do is use the card from, what was it called? Swiper card? Property card? Property card. So we're reusing our card component in there. Because we are mapping, we're going to have a key. And the key is going to be property singular .id. And then we're going to spread out the rest from property singular. Now, what's the problem? Let's refresh the page. No problem at all. And there we go. We have a page full of property cards ready to go. Let's check it on the mobile. That's not mobile. There we go. And we have our mobile navigation. Perfect. And a single column of properties. very uniform, looking pretty good. And that is the properties page complete. Again, later on, before we finish up, we'll convert this into an API call, we'll build the API layer, and we'll be good to go. Now we need to build a page for each individual property. We're going to build a single page that is going to fetch data and then render that data into a layout that we define. So we aren't going to build a page for every single one. We're going to build one skeleton. It's going to fetch the data and then render the information. So right now it's going to an ID page and we have nothing there. So let's build that out. We have got quite a bit of work to do before that is usable. So if we go to Pages folder, Properties, we need to create a dynamic root. So we're going to have ID, and that is going to be part of the URL. So any root that ends in a ID is going to match this, it's going to fetch the data, and it's going to render our property. So here we're going to have property single, all the single properties, and then test. So right now it's matching any root because we're just having a default page there. This time around we're going to use get server-side props, and this is going to run before the page is shown to the user. So we're going to fetch data in real time, whereas get static props fetches data at build time and then gives us a static HTML page. So we're going to do export async function get server-side props. And that's going to give us the context, which we'll use later. But for right now, we need the property from the data folder. So in our features, data, and then property was the single one. Now we're going to return props, and we're going to return property. And that gives us property to pass up to our page. And we should be able to log it to the console in the browser and pretend that we've just fetched data. Okay, so you can see here, get server-side props is fetching our fake API call and is rendering the data in the console. Perfect. Now, this property has got a lot of data that we need that is slightly different to our swiper card, our property card. So we're going to have to do a lot more work inside of our custom hook, which formats each property. So we need to go into our common folder, hooks, and use property format. We're going to do probably 5 or 6 more pieces of logic, and then we're going to pass that into our individual property page. So let's open up our property JSON file and have that open alongside our custom hook so we can see what we're doing here. So we have our last item is external ID. We're going to have photos. We're going to have description, cover video, panorama, amenities, and furnished status. Let's zoom out a little bit so we can see more. So let's start with photos. So you can see here that photos on the individual property is a little bit different. So on properties, we get back a list of individuals with one cover photo. But when it comes to the individual property itself, when we fetch that data, we're going to have an array of photos. So let's dig into that. They might not always be there, so let's prepare for that. So we're going to do const photos equals property dot photos. If it is there, we're going to map each photo and return the photo URL. And if it isn't there, just give me an empty array. And that's photos done. Next, we'll do description. So let's find description. Okay, we've got several. Let's go for the first one. So we'll just do const description equals property dot description. Perfect. Next we have cover video. So const cover video equals property. Let's find that on our data. Cover video. and we just need the URL. Now, when it comes to this one, I want to embed this video into the page, but this is the share link. This is not the embed link. So we're going to have to rip off the ID of the URL and change that link so that we can embed it into our page. So let's just get the end of that string. So maybe we should call this the URL, and then later we'll strip it off. So cover video URL equals property.covervideo.url. That gives us the entire string. And now we're going to slice the string up. So we'll do cover video equals cover video URL. So we grab that string, dot slice, cover video URL dot length -11. So you can see here, string dot slice, we're going to start at the end by giving it cover video URL dot length, start at the end, and then we want to strip off -11. So that gives us the ID. And then we can use that to embed our video into the page later on. So that's cover video done. Next is panorama. They might not always be there. So let's do panorama equals property.panoramas, fat fingering the ID there. There we go. Spell it correctly. Panorama. Okay, so don't be like me. Don't spell things incorrectly. Panoramas is an array. So if there is a panorama, there'll be an array, and we just want the first item of that array. So let's check if it is even there first. And if it is, do something. And if it isn't, do something else. So if it's not there, give us an empty array. And if it is there, I want to get property.panorama first item and then URL from that first item. So we're checking property.panoramas, checking it's there, checking the length. If it has a length, it means there's an array. If there is an array, give us the first item's URL. Otherwise, give us an empty array. Next, we need amenities, which is a bit of a fiddly one. Let's search for it in the JSON. Okay, so you can see here it is an array again, but then each one has another array. So we've got the first with a nested array, the second with a nested array, the third with a nested array. We're going to do some tricky flat maps and mapping here, so bear with me. So we're going to have const amenities equals property.amenities. If it has got them, I want to do a flat map to condense all of those arrays into one. And then for each item, I'm going to flatten all of these arrays into a single array. And then from each individual item, I want to extract or destructure the second amenities array. Then from there, we're going to return all the amenities arrays. And after each of those, we're going to return the item dot text. Let's have a look. Item, amenities, and then text. Okay, so we flatten all of the arrays, and then for each of those, we dig into the amenities and then take out the text. And the last one is furnished. So we do const furnished equals property.furnish furnishing status. Let's double check that I spelled that correctly. Furnishing status equals furnished. And then we're done. That is the logic for our custom hook. And now we can use that in our individual property pages. Okay, we'll zoom back in. Now let's close out our property JSON and let's import the rest of this into our individual property page. Let's squeeze that down, full size. So if we open up our pages folder, we have the ID dynamic root. Okay, we're going to import our custom hook. So it was use property format, and we're going to pass in the single property. And we see here I've got an error. Let's have a quick look. So property.panoramas, if it exists, I think I've forgotten an S on that. So let's go back to our use property format, panoramas, property.panoramas URL. Okay, that fixed it. We're using our custom hook, passing in the property, and let's just grab all of that data that we're exporting from our custom hook. And now our individual property has access to all of these details, nicely stripped away from each property we pass in. So let's start using it. So inside of our single property component, we're going to start with a box from Chakra-UI. And we're going to wrap this in our default layout. So you see here, individual property page wrapped in our default layout. Perfect. Let's keep it desktop size. First box is going to have a background color. F7, F8, F9, and a padding vertical, padding Y. It's going to be 3 rem. Let's close navigation, get some more space. Now this page is going to use grid. So we're going to import grid from Chakra-UI. We're going to give it 6 columns, and then we're going to have a repeating set of columns. We're going to need 6, and they're going to be 1 FR. So we're going to have 6 repeating columns in our grid, and they're all going to be of equal width. Between each column, we're going to give a gap of 5, max width, 1280 pixels, margin 0 auto. Now inside of our grid, we're going to have grid items. This allows us to place items on the grid anywhere we want. So it makes it a lot more flexible than Flexbox, believe it or not. So grid item, we also need to import that from Chakra-UI. Inside of this grid item, we're going to have a text box from Chakra. Inside this text box, we're going to have property type and title. Now this grid item, we want it to span across the entire width of our grid. So that's 6 columns, column span 6. So that'll make sure it takes up the entire width and nothing goes up next to it, and we can center it if we want. So let's do that. So we're going to do font size on this text. It's going to be 3XL. Font weight. It's going to be medium. Color. It's going to be blue, 800. And text align. Let's use some breakpoints here. Going to do base, center, SM, left. Okay, looking good. Still inside this first grid item, we're going to do flex from Chakra-UI. Inside the flex, we're going to have a text box from Chakra. That's going to have the address from our property custom hook, ID. We're going to import the external ID there from our custom hook. So you can see there the address dash ID with the ID. Now I think we should put like a little map icon here. So let's try and do that. So inside of our flex, we're going to have TB map pin. Is that going to import? Okay. TB map pin from React icons TB, self-closing tag. And that imports itself in nicely. Underneath our address and external ID, outside of our text box, let's do a badge from Chakra-UI. And inside this badge, we're going to do purpose, just like the card, for sale. Now let's do some styling. So on our flex box, we'll do a font size of XL, color, blue 600, text align, center, align items, center again, flex direction. Let's try and neaten this up. There we go. So base, column, SM, row. I'm going to do a slight gap on these items. They're a bit too close together. So let's do gap of 0.5 rem. Spreads it out just a little bit. And then margin Y, which is the vertical margin, going to do base of 1 rem. And then small screens upwards, 0. So inside of our flex, map icon, text box. So on the text box, let's do this a bit bigger. So let's do font weight. Actually, let's do it light. There we go, keeping it classy. And on the badge, I'm sure these were green on our properties page, so let's keep it consistent. Let's do color scheme, green. There we go. And that is our first grid item. So we've got the default layout, background color with the padding. And we have our grid. And the first grid item is our address and title. So now we can add 2 more grid items. Well, let's do a whole bunch more. We'll put a slider, we'll put some details about the property, we'll embed the video. But I think for all of that, it's going to get a bit too messy to have it in one component. So let's build out some individual components and then bring them into this page and then display our data. So I think if we're going to do the property slider, let's create a new folder inside of our features. We haven't got a features folder for this, so let's create one. So single property. Inside that, we're going to have components. And inside components, let's do a folder. We'll call it property thumbnail slider. It's going to be slightly different to the one we have on the home page. So let's just copy that name, property thumbnail slider. And then obviously inside of our slider, we're going to have a new file, property thumbnail slider.js as the component, and then the index file to export that. So we're going to do SF, grab the name, and then export some text. Squeeze this down. And in the sibling index, you know what's next. Default from Axios, that is completely wrong. From the sibling component. Now, what do I want in this property thumbnail slider? I'm going to try and build a similar slider to the one that you have for featured listings, but underneath each image, I want to have like a thumbnail that we can click on or swipe along. So it's going to be quite a few lines of text, but we're going to need to receive a bunch of images from our custom hook. So let's take this, import it into our single property page. After our first grid item, we're going to have a second grid item. We want it to span. How wide do we want this? So on the base, I think it should spread halfway across. Well, no, all the way. It should be a full page slider on mobile. So that's 6 columns. And small upwards, 3 columns. So on a big screen, the image gallery, image slider should take up half the page, and it gives us 2 columns. Okay. Now inside of this second grid item, we're going to import property, thumbnail, slider, self-closing tag, and it needs to take in all of the photos that we have from our custom hook. And these photos are coming from our list of photos being ripped off from property in our custom hook and returned in a nice array. And we pass that into property thumbnail slider as a prop called photos. Property thumbnail slider receives photos. We are going to need some custom state. So I'm going to do const thumbs, thumb, plural, swiper, set, thumb, plural. And we're going to use state from React. I'm going to pass in the initial value of null. Next, we need to import swiper and swiper slide. So import swiper from swiper React and swiper slide from swiper React. Perfect. We need to import the CSS from swiper. So that's swiper CSS. I messed this up last time, so let's try and get it right this time. I forgot to keep CSS here, so then we can do free mode. We also need navigation again, and we need thumbs. We need some additional imports, free mode from swiper, navigation from swiper, and thumbs from swiper. As you can see, that there's a lot of messing around with different directories for the same package. So you could just download this code, copy and paste it, make your life easy. And I think that's all we need to get started on this one. So let's return a swiper, close that off, and we're going to give it some styles. So style is going to be an object -- swiper navigation color, and that's going to be just white. And then we can just copy and paste this, and we need pagination color. We also want a loop, so loop is going to be set to true. Navigation, set to true. Thumbs, so we're going to have swiper, thumbs, swiper. And if the swiper is not destroyed, we're going to return the thumb swiper, otherwise null. I believe this was a fix to make sure that the thumbnails continuously loop over. And then if we click on a certain thumbnail, it shows the correct picture. Modules is going to be an object with an array. First item is free mode. Second is navigation. And the last one is thumbs. And then to finish off, our class name is going to be MySwiper2. This package is a bit fiddly, but once you get the settings dialed in, it does produce some good results. Now we actually have to do this 2 times. So we're going to wrap our first swiper in some fragments. And then we're actually going to do this again underneath. The first one is going to act as our big picture images, and the second one is going to act as our thumbnail swiper. So we're going to have 2 swipers or sliders. First one, big image. Second one, a row of images on the bottom. So let's get this out of the way. So on swiper, we're going to use the set thumb swiper that we created in use state. Loop, set to true. Space between, going to be 10. Slides per view, going to be 5. Free mode, set to true. Watch slides progress, true. Modules, we're just going to copy and paste these modules. Free mode, navigation and thumbs. Class name, MySwiper without the 2. So these are 2 individual class names. Now in between these 2 swipers, we're going to have a divider, and that comes from Chakra. Self-closing tag, and we're going to do a margin Y of 1 rem. Now we're going to pass in the same photos to both of these. So I'm going to try and do some fancy double typing here. So we're going to receive photos as a prop. I'm going to try and map over those. So photos.map, and for each image, we want to return a swiper slide. Close that, and each slide is going to have a key of image, and then inside each slide, we're going to have an image tag, self-closing image tag, and the source is going to be an object with image inside. Okay, so you can see I've just done that twice here. So inside our first swiper, mapping over the photos, and exactly the same in the second swiper. And there we have it. But on big screens, it's taken up 3 columns. Let's see if we can visualize the columns here. There we go. So now you can see the grid in full swing. 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 6 columns. On big screens, it takes up 1, 2, 3. On small screens, it will take up all 6 and go across the whole page. Our title, address takes up 6 columns again. So it pushes everything onto the next row. And if we click on each of these images, perfect. We can swipe across the thumbnails, click on a certain thumbnail, and it takes us to the correct image. I think that's looking pretty good. And that should be it. Again, this was a bit fiddly. It took me a while to get this working. A lot of Stack Overflow. So you can just download the repo and plug this into your project wherever you need to. Okay, so next grid item. Let's go back to our property page. First item is our title and address. Second item, the thumbnail slider, swiper. Next grid item, it's going to be some property details. This is also going to get quite long, so we're going to extract this into a custom component. So if we go into our navigation folder, let's squeeze these down. Inside features, inside property, inside of our components, we're going to create a new one. We're going to call this property stats. Inside property stats, we're going to have a component and an index.js file. Property stats is going to be a functional component. Export the good old test. And inside of our index, we're going to export default from the sibling. Now inside of our property stats, we're going to display the rooms, the baths, the price, and the size of the property. So that's going to be passed in here. So how do we get that into our property stats? So at first we'll import the property stats component, property stats into our individual property page, and we need to pass props into this so we can render it out later. So we should have all the details on our custom hook. Okay, price, rooms, baths, size. So let's use that. Rooms is going to be equal to rooms. Same with baths. Price and square size. Perfect. So we can now use all of these details in our property stats component. So let's go and do that. We're going to receive rooms, baths, price, and square size. Okay, first item is going to be a box. As always, we need to import that from Chakra, if I can say that properly. We are going to have a background color of white because we're going to have individual boxes on this light gray color. So we want a white box so it stands out nicely. Padding of 1.5 rem. Margin bottom of 1 rem. And then inside of this box, we're going to do a flex, also from Chakra. It's going to have a flex direction. Do some breakpoints again. On the base, we'll have column. And on SM, we'll have row. Font size, XL. Color, gray 500. Font weight is going to be light. Gap, 1 rem. Justify that content. Space around. And align those items in the center. So what exactly are we going to do with this? So this is going to give us a flex box. And we're going to line up baths, beds, square size, and price. But then each of those is going to be a flex itself with an icon and text. This is our first row that's also going to contain more flex boxes. So let's do our first one. Do another flex. Inside that is going to be a text box from Chakra, beds. Okay. After our text, we're going to have another flex box. And that is going to have rooms, which is being passed in as a prop. So next to rooms, the number, we'll probably need a icon. So we'll do TB bed. Is that going to work for us? Self-closing tag, TB bed. Nice, we've got the bed icon. Number of rooms. We'll do on the parent flex, just before beds. Let's make this a bit tidier. So flex direction equals column. Justify the content, center. Align items, center as always. And we'll do a slight gap of 0.3 rem. So our first item in our flex is the text beds. It's a column. So then the second item is going to be an additional flex. Bed icon, number of rooms. So this is going to need some tidying up. So after beds, we have flex. Let's align those items. So align items center. That brings the bed down in line with the one. And then we'll give it a gap, 0.5 rem. Okay. So you can see we've got our white box, beds, icon, and 1. Now we're going to do this 3 more times with baths, price, and size. But let's add a divider. We're going to do center, which comes from Chakra. And we're going to have a divider from Chakra again, self-closing this time. Orientation is going to be vertical. And if we save that, okay. On the center, we're going to have a height of 50 pixels. So I'm not sure if you can see that on this screen. We've got a small, thin divider that is going to separate the beds from the price from the number of rooms or baths. So now we can just repeat this a few more times. So if we grab our flex with the rooms and beds, we should be able to copy and paste this after our divider to get the next one. Next is baths. Then we pull in the bath data, and the icon is going to be TB bath, I believe, from the same library. So we can just import that in with a tab because we already have the beds imported. There we go, baths. Let's copy and paste that again. Let's copy our divider, place it after our baths, and then copy baths, place it after our divider. Okay, so next one is going to be size. And that was from SQ size. And the icon is going to be TB ruler. Perfect. And then the last one, take our divider, place it after size, and then copy our flexbox and place it after divider. And this one's going to be price, which we're importing as a prop. And we don't need an icon. I think the price is good enough. And let's add our measurement back onto the size there. So after size, I think it was sub M2, lowercase m. Perfect. So 58 meters squared, more or less, 800,000 price, 1 bed, 1 bath. Take my money. Okay, I think that is our property stats section complete. And that's already imported. Let's fix up some of this column spacing here. So I think it's taking up too much space and we haven't got any definition of how much space it should take. So let's copy it again. Let's go for column span, breakpoints, 6 SM3. There we go. So on big screens, it only takes up half of the page and the other half is our image gallery. Okay. Looking pretty good. Close that down. Okay, next up, I think we're going to create a new component that we're going to use across the website. It's going to have a title and some text that we wrap as children. So let's do that in our common folder. So we're inside features, common, inside modules. Let's create a new folder. Let's call it text content box. Grab that name, create a component and an index file. Create a functional component, export some text in the sibling. Going to export text content box. We're going to have a title which we can pass in as a prop, and we're going to have text which is going to change all the time. So we'll create a new wrapper that is like our navigation. We'll wrap the children with our title and background color. Okay, so let's import this into our individual property page. So after property stats, we're going to import the text content box, which is going to be a wrapper. We're going to pass in a title, description. That'll be one of our props that we can use. And then inside of this, we'll have a text box from Chakra and have the description from the custom hook. And that font weight is going to be light, color of gray 600, font size of 1 rem, and number of lines. We're going to cut this down to 4. Okay, so we have our description, and that should be a child of our text content box. So let's head over here, render the children, and use our prop title. So we're going to get title and children. Let's see if we are working. Let's render title, should be description, perfect. And then children should be a text box with description, perfect. So let's take our Chakra box, import that, Background color, we want a white box, just like the property stats. So we'll do white. Padding of 1.5 rem. Margin bottom of 1 rem. Okay, and inside this, we're going to have our title text. Import that correctly from Chakra. There we go. Going to take in our title. Description, perfect. Going to do a font size of 1.5 rem. Font weight of light. Color, gray 600. And a margin bottom of 0.5 rem. Okay, looking nice. Let's open this up a little bit. Now we want to render our children. Let's have a horizontal divider. It's going to save us time in the future doing this into a component. So a divider from Chakra, self-closing tag. So margin Y. Let's make sure, there we go. Margin Y, 0.7 rem. Okay, nice divider. Margin on top, margin on the bottom. And then after our divider, we're just going to render out the children that we've already styled. I'm going to keep this without styling because we're going to use different types of content and pass it into here. So I don't want to be too rigid on how this is styled. And that's it for our description box. We can now use that anywhere else on the site, pass in a title, and then wrap it with the children. So we've got our text content box, pass in a prop as description, and then pass in the content that we want to wrap. Now you can't always control how people add their descriptions. So some of these are going to look kind of bad. Some are going to look perfect. Just depends on what property you're working with. Now we're going to do a new text content box. This one is going to be called, so title of amenities. Okay, so you can see we've already got the title and divider comes in straight away. We're going to pass in a simple grid this time as one of the children. Columns, we're going to do some breakpoints. So base 1, SM 2. The font weight on this simple grid is going to be light. Color gray 600. And font size of 1 rem. Let's separate these out a little bit. Not possible. Okay, so inside of our text content box, title is amenities, we can see here. And as the child, we're passing in a simple grid with responsive styles. And in here, we are going to map over our amenities from our custom hook. I came across a few of these, it didn't have any. So first we want to check if it has a length. So if the array of amenities is greater than 0, if it is, return something. If it isn't, please contact us for more info. But if it does have these amenities, we're going to do amenities dot map, and then for each item, we're going to return a text box from Chakra with the item inside it. We have an error. Let's see if we can debug this one. So let's do log amenities return. Amenities is undefined. Okay, let's try and figure out why that is. If we go into our custom hook, I think the problem is I have spelled this wrong. So let's copy the correct spelling, put that in the right place, and I'm going to have to find where I've used this. Okay, item.text, amenities, back to the page. Let's update these two spellings. You silly boy. Get rid of that. And we need to change the spelling again. There we go. Silly. There we go. Amenities is now being mapped over and turned into a simple grid with 2 columns. Don't be like Calvin, spell things correctly. Okay, and if there are no amenities, it will just return, please contact us for more information. And we've wrapped that inside of our text content box. Okay, so I think that our description column is done. That's looking nice and tidy. Almost level at the bottom there. Okay, so now we need to have our video embeds. Let's create another custom component for that. And we'll pass in the ID for the YouTube video and then use the embed link. So where should we put this? Let's tidy up our folders. Okay, so inside features, inside property, components. Let's do property embed. Let's do property YouTube embed. Keep it specific. New file, component, new file again, index.js. Let's export this component and then export from default. Okay, now let's take our property YouTube embed component and place it inside a new grid item, I reckon. So we're finished on the right side. So after we close this grid item, we're going to have a new one. And this is going to hold our property embed for YouTube, self-closing tag. There we go. And we can see on the page, printing out test, where we want our video embed. And for this as a prop, we want to pass it from our custom hook, the cover video. So property YouTube embed, cover video, and then pass that in as a prop. We can then rip that off and use it inside of our component. So first things first, get the old box out. Going to have a padding top. Going to do some trickery here. We'll get to that in a second. We'll do position relative, height of 0, overflow of hidden, and then frame border of 0. Now this is going to give us a box where we can place an iframe, but we're going to use a ratio calculation. So const ratio equals 315 divided by 560 times 100. And the reason I'm doing this is because we're creating a box at a specific size, a specific ratio for YouTube, so that when our page loads, it doesn't jump all over the place. So the page is going to load, then we have to call YouTube, fetch that iframe, and it's called content layout shift, and it negatively impacts the Lighthouse scores from Google, I believe. And it also looks a little bit jarring when the page is jumping around and things are loading in. So we're actually going to reserve a space on the page at a specific size and wait for that video to load in. So we're going to use padding top. We're going to do a string here and use our variable. So backticks, dollar brackets, ratio, percent. And inside this box, we're going to do an iframe, self-closing iframe, style. It's going to be an object with position, absolute. Top is going to be 0 and bottom is going to be 0. Width is 100%. Height is 100%. And these values are copied from the YouTube embed code. So I'm not just writing this from memory. We're going to have a source, which is going to be HTTPS. Probably get this from YouTube, it would be easier. youtube.com/embed/our ID. So cover video. You just grab this from the YouTube video, you click on share, you click on embed, and it just gives you this. And then we're adding our own ID. And it also comes with this. So allow equals accelerometer, autoplay, clipboard write, encrypted media, gyroscope, picture in picture. Now I realize that it's pretty stupid just to tell you that. So I'm going to show you on YouTube. When you click on the share button, you click on embed, and it gives you the width and the height. We specify that and create a ratio from that. And we take it off of the iframe. We just give it 100% to fill that box that has the ratio. And then the allow section, you just copy picture in picture, blah, blah, blah. So that's where this line comes from. I'm just copying and pasting this from the YouTube embed. So if we save this, we get a tiny, tiny video just down here. Super cute. I believe we need to specify how many columns we want this video to take up. So I think we are done here. Our property YouTube embed is complete. It's imported. It's pulling in the video with the ID. And it's using the ratio. You see there's no giant black borders from where the video is too small or too big. So let's close this up and let's specify how big this grid item should be. Probably 3, like the rest. So we'll do col span, breakpoints, base. We'll do it as 6, full screen, and SM we'll do it as 3, 1 column, well, half the page. And you can see there, perfect ratio for the size of the video. Sometimes when you embed videos, you get like a giant black cinema line, top and bottom, where the box isn't quite the right size, but not here. And everything fits perfectly. I think we're looking pretty tight. Let's do the 3D walkthrough. We're going to create another one just like this, but we're going to import a different type of link. Now this one, I think we're going to copy pretty much the same as the YouTube one, with a few differences. So let's create the folder that we need. Very similar to YouTube embed. We're going to go to components, property. What are these things called? Matterport, embed. Again, we're going to create a component. And we're going to create an index.js file. We're going to copy and paste the name, export some text, and in the sibling, export default. Shouldn't even show this anymore. From, there we go. Now we're going to import this into our ID page, our property ID page. Is it still open? It is open. We need a new grid item, and if we specify the same width, it should sit next to it. It should take up 3 columns. So let's do that. We'll just copy and paste that, and we'll import Matterport. There we go. From features, property components. And we need to pass in the panorama, I believe. Let's make sure I spell it correctly. Well, we've almost used all of our details. Let's pass in panorama as a prop to our property Matterport embed. Save that. Test is rendering. Perfect. We're going to get the prop panorama. Now I'm going to grab most of the YouTube. Yeah, let's do the same with the ratio. I'm going to grab the ratio and pretty much all of the insides of our YouTube version and just place it in here. Lovely. We need to import the box from Chakra, and we need to replace our iframe source. So we're going to remove the specific YouTube allow list. The source is going to be just panorama. I believe it's a complete Matterport link. Height 100%, width 100%. We might not even need that as a string. Just leave it like that. We'll see if that works correctly, depending on how they've pasted their link for the Matterport walkthrough. I believe we're good to go. We have the ratio, relative 0, hidden 0, iframe, panorama. If I save this, beautiful. Perfect ratio, no cinema borders. Everything is nicely lined up and a lovely grid. Let's check this out in mobile. A lot of these errors are going to come from YouTube. Nothing that we can do on there. It's just rendering. Let's do this as a mobile and squeeze this down. Perfect. Perfect ratio, even on mobile. We've got our list of amenities, description, beds, bath size. Check it out. I think that's looking pretty good. And if I'm not mistaken, I think we could be done. Let's wrap our videos in a text content box so we can label them for people that don't understand. So let's go back to our property ID page. Inside of our grid item for YouTube, we've got our grid item, we've got our YouTube embed. Let's add a text content box, close that up, wrap it around our property YouTube embed, and the title is going to be video walkthrough. And let's do the same for our Matterport. So text content box, we'll wrap that around our Matterport import, and title is going to be 3D virtual walkthrough. Okay, so it's more consistent now. Lovely jubbly. And I think that should be it. Right now, we're fixed with this ID because it's the only one that we have. But as the last part of this video, we're going to do an API layer, and we're going to be able to call any of these IDs and render all the information from all of the properties. Let's squeeze this down and try and wrap this video up. Okay, so let's work on our contact page. Let's open up Next.js pages, close properties. We're finally done. We're going to create a new page called contact.js. I'm going to call this contact page. Render out some dummy text. And we should be good to go with that page. Let's check it out. Contact, test. Perfect. We're going to need our default layout. So let's start with that. Default layout, please. There we go. And we're going to use the default layer as the parent tag for everything. So inside here, it's going to be our contact page. So let's start off with the good old, you guessed it, Chakra box. Going to give this a background color of, let's see, F7, F8, F9, and then a padding of 3 rem on the vertical axis. And then we're going to go with another grid. Going to be quite similar to the individual property page. So let's just import grid from Chakra. We're going to do a template columns, the same as the property page. We're going to do repeat 6, so 6 columns across, and they're all of individual widths, so 1 FR. Going to give a gap between each of these columns of 5. Let's be consistent, do 5 as a string. Max width of 1280 pixels. And a margin 0 auto to keep it all in the center. Now, first item should be a contact form. So we're going to have to create a new form for the contact us section. We want it to go across, let's do some breakpoints. So contact form on a mobile, full width, 6 columns. Small size, let's do 4. We're going to use a text content box that we created. So let's see if we can grab that. There we go. In the common modules folder. We need a title for this. So title is going to be contact us. Nice. And then we can wrap some kind of contact form. So let's do that in a minute. Let's do another grid item. This one's going to be a bit different. It's not half and half. It's going to be col span. Going to do a base of 6. And SM, the remainder should be 2. Inside here, I'm going to do a text box that we've created. And title is going to be, let's say, for inquiries, contact somebody. Okay, so we've got our 2 grid items. This somebody is going to be inside a text box. Let's say some random name, public relations manager. Need to import the text box from Chakra 1,000 times. Going to create a new line, just do some random address. Let's copy and paste this. So we have 2 people to contact. Let's say this person has got a different name. Rod, was it, from the main page? Rod Epsley. And let's just leave it at that. Our text content box is not styling the children because everything is going to be a bit different. So let's put some styles on these 2 text boxes. Let's say font weight, light, color, gray 600, font size 1 rem. Copy that over to the second one. There we go. Let's say on this first one, let's just do a margin bottom, let's just say 1 rem. Space these out. There we go. You can contact Rod or Lynette, same place in Miami, Florida. Perfect. Okay, I think that's all we need. Let's jump in and make our contact form, and then we'll place it inside this box. And I think we should be good to go. So let's do that. So let's open up our navigation, close down some of these folders, features. The contact form might appear in multiple places. So let's put it in common, modules, and then contact form. Inside contact form folder, we're going to have the component, and then we're going to have the index.js file. So SF, we're going to have contact form, export some text, and then you can do this with your eyes closed. I still can't. Default from contact form. Now let's import our contact form into our contact page, and we left a space just here to import that. See if we can do it correctly. Features, common, modules, contact form. There we go, tab that in. And we have our test rendering inside of our text content box. Lovely, jubbly. Starting to come together, starting to reuse some of these pieces, put in React to work. Now, let's close down all of these pages and work on our form. Now, what do we need for a contact form? Probably going to need React hook form. So where did we have that last time? Hero form. Can we copy some of this? Okay. Let's put these side by side. Now React hook form, we need to import use form. So copy that, use form. We need to copy their custom hook. So let's place that inside of our component. And the onSubmit function, we're going to need that. And I think that's all we need to import. Okay, so we can now work on our contact form, imported use form from React hook form, import the custom hook that manages the data, and then we can submit and do whatever we want with that information. So let's start with a good old Chakra box from Chakra-UI. Make sure it imports correctly. Width, I'm going to do 100%. I'm going to do a border radius of SM. Background color of white. And the text color is going to be gray 700. Now our form is going to have an onSubmit. Remember, we used the React hook forms handle submit, and we passed it our onSubmit. Form control from Chakra-UI. And inside here, we're going to have our input from Chakra, which is a self-closing tag. Scroll down a bit. So our input is going to have a margin top of 1.3 rem. ID, we'll leave that blank for a second. Type is going to be text. Placeholder, we're going to leave that blank, and we're going to use the register from React hook forms. Inside register, we pass in the name, and then required is set to true as an object, and that should be our ID. So let's copy this 2 more times, and we can fill these in individually. So the first one is going to be name, placeholder, name, register, name. Next one, we'll do phone, placeholder, phone, register, phone. And the last input is going to be email. ID of email, placeholder, capital email, register email. Let's switch phone and email around. So we'll do name, then email, then phone. Okay, so now that I've completed these missing pieces, it now shows up, no errors, good. After that, we're going to have a text area from Chakra. I'm going to give it a margin top of 1.3 rem. ID of message, type is going to be text area, placeholder, no, cold fingers, place, holder, message with capital. Then we do the React hook forms, register this. The name is going to be message. And then we required set to true. So let's look at this. Text area, margin top, ID, type text area, register message, required true. We'll actually convert this to a self-closing tag. So we get rid of that. Text area is self-closing. And then finally, we'll have a checkbox from Chakra, checkbox, margin top, 1.3 rem. ID is going to be that GDPR, type, checkbox, placeholder, GDPR, and then the register for React hook forms, register, the name, GDPR, then the object of required true. Let's have a look at this. You've got our checkbox. Next, we're going to add in some text. I consent to having this website store my details for future communication. Something like that. Let's make this a bit smaller. Text box from Chakra. Are we using a text box already? No, we're not. So that needs to be imported from Chakra. There we go. We'll wrap this consent form, consent details. Font size, we'll do something small, 0.8 rem. And then color, we'll do gray 500. Perfect. I consent, blah, blah, blah. And then after our form control, we're going to have a button from Chakra. I'm going to do type of submit, color scheme, blue, font size, XL, and then padding on all edges of 2 rem. Margin top, give it some space to breathe. Okay, nice blue box. Inside there, we're just going to have send message. And that is our contact form. Contact page, done. Okay, I think it's time for us to build out our API layer. It's going to be super straightforward. We're going to have a folder in the base of our project called lib. And then from here, we're going to create all of the functions that we need to fetch the data for the home page, properties page, and the individual property page. So let's start doing that. So inside of lib, I'm going to do a new file. I'm going to call this axios.js. Inside here, we're going to import Axios from Axios as the capital A, Axios. We're then going to export our own version of Axios, and we're going to add some headers to every single request that we make. So const headers, and we'll fill that in later on. And then we do export const Axios, which is the one that we'll be calling, is axios.create. There we go. We're going to pass in an object where the base URL is going to be HTTPS, and then we're going to go and find the API URL that we need. And then we're going to pass in headers as headers. Headers, there we go. Now let's go and find the details that we need to create this API call. If we head over to RapidAPI, I'm going to leave the link in the description. Sign up for an account, and then I'll leave the link to the property API down below. Okay, once you've gone through the whole drama of signing up for a Web 2 website these days, we're going to go to RapidAPI. signed in account. We're going to search for real estate. Let's see if we can find our properties quickly. The answer is no. So what we're going to do is type in BAYUT, and that's going to give us the UAE property API. We're going to click on that. We should be able to subscribe. If we go to pricing, we get 500 hits a month. Subscribe to that for free. Wait however long it takes, I guess. Taking the Rapid out of RapidAPI. Okay, and we're done. So now that we're subscribed, we should be able to hit some endpoints. We're going to need to use, let's see, properties list. We are going to grab our headers. So we're going to take our headers and place that into our API layer. Just like that. We're actually going to create a new file called .env, and we're going to put our API key in here, just as good practice. I'm going to call this RapidAPI key. And we're going to copy and paste our API key from here and place it into our .env file. We're also going to go to our .gitignore and make sure that we do not push our env to GitHub. And you can see it grays out to make sure that Git does not track this file. Okay, always make sure you either have local or .env in your ignore file. We're then going to head back to our Axios file, and in the place of the API key, we're going to do process.env.rapid.API key. And that's going to allow us to use our API key in all of our API calls. Now we also need to have the base URL. So we're going to copy this from RapidAPI just before the / of any of these, like properties or agencies. So add the .com, I'm going to copy it to there, and replace our base URL like that. All of our API keys are going to have the headers from here, and they're all going to start with the base URL. So now we can start building our individual API calls for our pages. So the first one, we're going to grab all of those properties, about 25. So we're going to go to RapidAPI. We're going to go to properties / list. We're going to see some params that we're going to use for our API call to call all of those properties. Let's just grab all of those params, close this down. We're going to go to features, home, and inside home, we're going to create a new folder called API. Inside API, I'm going to create a new file called getProperties.js. Inside there, we're going to import from the library file we just created. So that was in the library folder, and then Axios. So we're not using the default Axios. This is the default, and this is our version with the headers and the API key. We want the version we just created in the library. We're going to do export const get properties. It's going to be an async function. Then we're going to do our API call. We're going to destructure data. We're going to await Axios.get. Then we're going to pass in the endpoint given to us by the RapidAPI. So that's properties-list. I'm going to add some params. So we're going to add an object and then paste our params in there. We're going to change purpose to for sale. We're going to change this to a number that we can pass in to our function and change the amount of properties that we get back whenever we want. We're going to delete page, leave language as EN, sort by city level score, has video. It's going to be set to true because we need all of these properties to have video links. Has floor plan, set to true. Has panorama, set to true. Going to delete category and rent frequency. Then after all of that, we're going to return data.hits. So now we can call get properties. We can pass it a number. It's going to use the base URL from our Axios file, and it's going to call the endpoint properties list, which is going to give us back a number of properties that we define with these params. So let's use that in our page. I'm going to close this down, go to our home page, Let's zoom out a little bit. Okay, so we used the home folder API. We're going to go to Next.js pages, into the index homepage, zoom out a bit. Now inside of our get static props, we're going to update this. So let's delete our JSON file. I'm going to do const properties equals await get properties. And you can see that comes from features home API. Import that in. And then we're going to pass in a number. So for our home page, how many do we need? 5. So let's use that. Pass in 5. And we're going to return properties. We can then pass that up to our page. Let's call it featured properties. Keep it consistent. So we call our API, get properties, pass in a number, and then we return that to our index page, which should give us 5 featured properties. Let's do a refresh. And there we go. We're no longer using the JSON file to fetch properties. We're now using the API, and they're still getting pulled in and displayed in our slider. Perfect. Now we need to do our properties page. Right now, this comes from the JSON. We need to update this to pull it from the API instead. So I've just realized we're going to be using the API in more than one place, and I've put it in the home folder. So what we should do, if we're going to use it in properties as well, possibly lift this API call up to common. So let's see if we can do that without breaking everything. So if we open common and then just drag the API folder up to common, we're going to have to update our import. And it looks like it already has automatically updated it. Let's delete that and make sure we do it again. So now this is at features common API. Import that again. Okay, so we've moved that from home up into a shared folder in common in API. So now if we head to our properties page, we can now import that. So I'm going to do const properties plural equals await get properties from the features common API. I'm going to pass in a number. Let's do 20. We're then going to return all the properties. And let's see if that still works. Perfect. So we're now getting these from our API call and no longer from our JSON file. Close these down. So now if we go to a single property, we're going to have to create an API call for this, and we have a folder for property. In our features property folder, create a new folder, call it API. Inside that, we're going to do a file called getProperty, singular. We're going to import Axios from our library. Remember, not the default Axios, but the Axios that we created. I'm going to do export const get property detail, or we can just call it get property as a singular async. And then here we're going to need to have the ID of the property that we're searching for, which comes from the URL. We're going to do const data, strip data off of Axios, axios.get, and this one from RapidAPI for the properties detail is going to be properties /detail. And then we add our params. Add our params with the external ID. And then we should get back that one property. So we do / properties detail. Second argument is an object with key params. And our external ID, like in the docs, make sure I copy that, get it right. We're going to use the ID we pass in to this function. And then after that, we're going to return data. Now we can call this function with any ID on the end of our URL, and that will fetch our specific property using the ID and return all the data that we need. So let's go and use this. Inside Next.js pages, we have properties, and we have the unique ID. Now we get to use the context object given to us by get server-side props. We're going to do const. We need the ID, which refers to the file name here. So on the context object, there's going to be a key with ID. Let's see if we can log this out. And it's probably going to be, there we go, in the terminal. we're going to have a query. Let's blow this up. On the context object, we're going to have a query, and it's going to mark it as ID because of our page name. And the ID is going to be on the end of our query. So we can destructure this in get server-side props. So we need const ID equals context dot query. If we log ID, we're going to get 650, just like the URL. Perfect. Now we can use this and call our new function to get the ID, to get the property we need. So I'm going to do const property singular equals await get property singular, passing in the ID. We can delete our JSON and we can return property. Let's go the verbose root, and that's it. We call our new function, give it the ID, and return it to our page. And then we destructure it in the page here. So if we go to a random property, we can see here we fetch all the details of this specific one. We're no longer getting it from the JSON. With price, size, baths, beds, address, title, video walkthroughs, and we're good to go. We can clean this file up, get rid of our console log. We're not using furnished and we're not using cover photo in the individual. Just clean that up a little bit. And that is the end of the build. So you've built the hero, the PDF guide form, you've got your sliders with your featured properties, you've built out your meet the team section, the partners section, testimonials, and the footer. We've got a contact us page, we've got click to call, we've got our properties page, which fetches using the API, and then we've got a dynamic URL that fetches information based on a query, also using an API. We've got virtual walkthroughs that we can use on our page, which takes us through the property. And we've also got the YouTube video walkthrough. And everything is mobile responsive. We've got some YouTube errors there, which always happens. Nice mobile menu. Everything is displayed perfectly for mobile screens. And you can now deploy this to your host of choice. Okay, well done for making it through that build. It was a long one, but you now have the knowledge to add as many pages as you want using server-side rendering and static page generation using Next.js. You've learned how to build out an API layer, fetch data, and render it in Next.js. You've learned how to keep components clean using React custom hooks, and most importantly, you've saved hours and hours of CSS headache by using Chakra-UI. The link to the gist with all of those consts that we mentioned earlier on, like the testimonials and the agent cards, I'm going to put it below this video. And also the actual repo to the entire website is going to be linked down below as well. Share this video with anyone that you think needs to have some portfolio fillers, and subscribe if you want to build more React projects every week. Thank you for watching, and I'll speak to you soon.